Alex, spring has sprung. It is a season of change. There's a lot of things going on top of spring being a rainy, messy, mucky mess
Yes.
in Pennsylvania. There is a lot of change going on in both of our lives. Well, mine more, but
Yes.
Yeah, yours more than mine, but it's definitely been busy. Stuff has grown again. I've seen a lot of the very early blooming plants have already started to bloom, or at least
yeah, there's these
and-
trees around my work, and they have white blossoms, and I'm like, are those Bradford pears?
Yes, sir, they are. They have real little white blossoms.
I hate
Yeah.
them.
Yes. They are an invasive tree in North America. They were
I don't know if they're invasive
They
so
are
much as they're
invasive.
ornamental.
They were
and they're
brought
just
as an ornamental and they became invasive.
they're annoying.
As a lot of invasive plants do. Yes.
But hello, everybody. Welcome to Life the Complete Story. I am Tyler, one of your hosts, as well as Alex, the other one.
The other one, yes, that's me. I'm the other guy who's here.
Today we have an interesting episode for you. We are starting our talk on catfish. This will be the first of 3 weeks of catfish. We're going to cover them based off of region this time. So before we typically just kind of like go down the stack of the different families. Today, since there's so many families of catfish, we're separating it by region. So today we're talking specifically about Asian catfish. But first, we'll start, as we always do, with our Nature in the News. Alex, today I have found an article for us.
Yes, you did.
Today's article comes from Science Daily, more specifically published by the University of Texas at Arlington. So what these guys did was they took the flower pot snake, also known as the Brahminy blind snake. They're a really tiny little snake, almost look like a worm, but they're reptiles. And what makes these guys unique is the fact that they have 3 sets of chromosomes instead of the normal 2 like in humans. So what that means is it can reproduce asexually without a mate.
And I found us a picture already because these are funky little dudes.
That's
That's
so happy.
That's a flower pot snake. They quite literally look like worms. If I can.
So the point of this article was not to show they can produce without mate. It was actually to uncover what allows them to do like genetic repair in their DNA.
Okay.
So they're less susceptible to mutations within their DNA due to premeiotic endoreplication. What that means is the snake will actually duplicate its chromosomes before it divides. So it sidesteps the typical need for pairing of chromosomes.
Okay. That's specifically in the meiosis is specifically the division for the creation of gametes or your sexual cells, either the egg or the sperm. So in typical reproduction, when they divide, you wind up with half a set of chromosomes in each. They come together to give you one full set of chromosomes. So half from mom, half from dad.
Right. So something else they kind of figured out while they were doing this, little side finding they had, was that a lot of like the immunotype amino genes, as well as like sexually selected genes, are kind of suppressed or lost their function per se in this. Is it triploidy?
Yes.
Yeah, in this triploidy, and in the not so much in the animal kingdom, more so specifically chordates. Your verdates, triploidy is very rare. I can think of a handful of species off the top of my head.
Typically, that is a very detrimental condition for the chordates.
And there's a lot of mutations that occur.
Yes. Yeah.
Where you do have triploidy, but it's typically just triploidy of a single chromosome.
Yeah. So that typically they call that like trisomy. So that's where in the
trisomy.
Yeah. So that the genetic and reproductive differences that this snake has, they said may be able to provide insight into even some human trisomy conditions such as Down syndrome, which is trisomy 21, or having 3 of the 21st chromosome. In humans, we have 23 pairs. So that having that extra 21st chromosome is what causes Down syndrome.
So little article we found, once again, that was published by the University of Texas at Arlington on April 2nd, 2010. Alex, what are we talking about today?
So today we are talking about catfish, specifically the Asian group of catfish. So these are not just these are catfish that are native to Asia. We have a handful of groups that we're going to be discussing today. The first of these is the Islidae.
There's not much on these guys.
There's not much on these guys specifically. Now, this is a family of catfish, it said, that are native to Asia. They usually have dorsal fins that have a very short base, and they do have a spine, but there is one group within there, one genus, Ilia, which lacks the dorsal fin altogether, so it's a little different. That is something you see a lot with catfish, as well as many of the other ray fin fish, but catfish, it's typically very well pronounced. They have spines that run kind of that the frontal aspect of their fins, especially the pectoral and dorsal fins. I know in the catfish that live in the United States, like the
Blues
like
and
the
the channel cats.
channel cats, I know especially, those spines do actually have a venom in them, kind of a defense mechanism is really what it is. It's not like a hunting mechanism, but it just causes pain. Not a super long, drawn out kind of pain, like similar to how like the lionfish is, but that's kind of the point of the spine. So as we talk about that through the catfish, you understand what we mean with the spines. So these guys, they don't look quite as much as your typical catfish do. This is one group of in the Islidae family. This is Clipsoma garua. You can see there. Typically, when you think of catfish,
traditional cat.
Yes, when we think of the catfish that we're familiar with in the United States, they tend to have a very flattened. So like some it's specifically called the flathead catfish, but these are a little more your typical fish shape for more. Correct. Yes.
So that'll move us into our next group of fish. This is going to be the family Achisidae, also known as the stream catfish. Once again, these guys are found in Asia, as are all of ours, specifically like Malaysia, Sumatra, those areas. This is Alex's portable species, Acrocoidonychthys rugosus.
Yes, this is an artist rendition of this catfish.
There's about 57 species in 5 genera. Those genera are Achesis, Pseudobagarius, Acrocoidonychthys, Gritenstinia, and Perichisis. So they're pretty small in size. They got really small eyes in comparison to the rest of their body, and are completely covered in these tubercles, which is kind of like a round nodules, not so much a scale per se.
And that's the case with many catfish. They tend to have a much more fleshy exterior.
Smoother body plan.
Yes, they tend to have more smoother bodies, not really scaly compared to many of the other fish that we've talked about.
The dorsal fin has a strong spine and a short base, with typically four or five rays on that fin, and about 4 pairs of barbels found around the mouth. We'll talk about those a little bit later today. They have a lower fin ray count in their caudal fin, and that's really going to cover it for this group of fish.
Cool. So that'll take us into our next group, which is the Tyler, if you would find us a picture. This is Amblycipitidae. These are known as the torrent catfishes. This is a monophyletic group containing 4 monophyletic genera: Amblyceps, Leobagris, Nahangbagris, and Xerenbagris. This is the most basal of the Ciceroid family, which is a superfamily of catfish, which covers the last the last family that we talked about, this family, as well as I just had it, where am I at? As well as the Ciceroidae and Erythistidae families. As I said, these are another group of freshwater catfish, having about 36 species. They are found in the swift freshwater streams in southern and eastern Asia, including Pakistan, northern India, down to Malaysia, China, Korea, and Japan. Mainly, the genus Amblyceps is mainly distributed in India and the Malaysian peninsula. Leobagris are found more in the Yangtze River Basin, Taiwan, Japan, and the Korean peninsula. And the Xerenbagris is only found in the Pearl River Basin. They have dorsal fins that are covered by skin, so they're not just scaly, but they are covered in skin as well. They have an adipose fin that is fused with the caudal fin, so it's kind of the caudal fin is a bit bigger. And then they also have a dorsal fin that is short, and they have a dorsal fin spine that is fairly weak, and then they also have a short anal fin as well, and they have about 6 pairs of barbels that are found in a poorly developed or even absent lateral line. In the Ambliceps and Leobagris species, they only grow to be about 10 centimeters or just under 4 inches in length, so not very big. And Leobagris is more stout than the Ambliceps, and some of those Ambliceps will actually have a cup-like flap above the pectoral fins that you wouldn't find in the Leobagris group. So that will cover those guys.
Our next group is going to be Bagridae.
I may have to run, actually. There appears to be a structure fire in Penborough.
We can we'll do it next week.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
It's fun.
Sounds good.
Have fun.
Well, we at least got started. We'll just pick up from there. Remember Bagridae. All right, I'll see you, buddy.
Apologies for the delay, guys. We're back.
Yes, that's my fault. I had to run for an emergency, but that's why it looks a little different. But we are back picking up with Bagridae, we said. That is our next family of catfish.
Yes, so Bagridae is going to be a small family of cat. Not small. They're about 245 species, but most of them are rather small. They're known as the naked catfish or bagred catfish. They're native to Africa and Asia, specifically the genus Bagrus is native to Africa, and all the other ones are in Asia, which is why we're covering them in our Asian catfish. So, what makes these guys unique per se is they have no scales on their body, hence why they call it the naked catfish. They reach a maximum length of 1.5 meters or 4.9 feet. And they have 4 pairs of well-developed barbels covered by a layer of taste bud epithelium. So epithelium is like the outermost layer of skin.
Yeah.
But your genera for Bagridae are going to be Bagrichthys, Bagoides, Bagris, Batasio, Chandramara, Curiobagris, Hemibagris, Hemiliocasis, Horobagris, Hyalobagris, Liocasis, Mistus, Nanobagris, Oleura, Peltiobagris, Pseudobagris, Pseudomystis, Rama, Rita, Spirata, Pseudolyra, and Tachysurus.
Nice. That'll take us into our next family, which is Chassidae. This is another one of our catfish family. These are known as the squarehead catfish, frogmouth catfish, or angler catfish. You can see the image I pulled up here is called the angler catfish. These are one of the 4 recognized species in this genus. This image is Chaka bancanensis. So there's only one genus in the family, the genus Chaka, and these 4 species: Chaka bancanensis, burmensis, Chaka chaka, and Chaka sirica, which that one was discovered pretty recently in 2012. These guys typically have a very sedentary lifestyle, spending a lot of their time kind of motionless, I believe, probably along the bottom of the waterway. They're found in the freshwater rivers, canals, ponds of eastern India to Borneo. Kind of a variety of habitats, as I said, the rivers, canals, ponds of the grasslands, scrublands, deciduous, and rainforests. However, Chaka bacanensis, this one I pulled up here, is only found in the rainforest, where it actually inhabits the peat that is left over. These guys, they can have 3 to 4 pairs of barbels, but typically if they have nasal barbels, which are right near the openings for the nose, they're typically pretty small. And these guys only get about 20 centimeters or 8 inches long. They have a short dorsal fin, and they have strong serrated fin spines, so they can do some damage They're good, and they have good protection because of it.
So next we're going to have the genus, or not the genus, the family Cranoglannidae, which has the genus Cranoglannis in it. This is the only extant genus for this family. These guys are, I had it in the notes, where'd it go? The armorhead catfish is what they are known as. They are 5 species: Cranoglannis boulderis, Cranoglannis caeolangensis, Cranoglannis henrici, and Cranoglannis multiradiatus, and Cranoglannis songhonensis. They're found all throughout China and Vietnam in the larger rivers. They have short dorsal fins, as you can see in the picture that Alex pulled up, which is Cranoglannis boulderis. They have forked caudal fins, and they have large eyes with a scaleless body. And they have a bony plate at the top of their head, which is why they have the name the armorhead catfishes. And they have 4 pairs of barbels.
Nice. So then that will take us into our next family, Erythistidae. Let me shrink my image before. These guys, these catfish, originate from southern Asia. There's about 45 species previously placed within the family Sisoridae, but they were made their own group due to a lot of different characteristics between them. As I said, found in southern Asia, primarily the Indian subcontinent to western Thailand and the northern peninsula. Very small, kind of cryptically colored, as you can see here. They have very good camouflage. They do have what is called a pectoral girdle, similar to kind of the human clavicle or the collarbone to the back of the shoulders. And that because of that is called the coracoid process, which is kind of a extension of the shoulder and into the back. It's very long. It extends beyond the base of the pectoral fin, so they have pretty strong pectoral fins. They differ from the other amblycipitids, the other catfishes, or torrent catfish, because they lack a cup-like fold of skin that is in front of the pectoral fin. But they do have a dorsal fin with a strong spine and no thick covering of skin, while some of the others, they have a covering of skin over that spine to kind of protect it some. They do have a nasal barbel, and they have widely separated nostrils along either side of the head, and some of them actually do possess a adhesive kind of apparatus, kind of like a suction cup to allow them to suction to the bottom of the water or the riverbeds where they live. Because they live in some kind of faster flowing river systems.
All right, our next group is going to be Heteropneustidae. These guys are the air sac catfish. It's one genera, Heteropneustis. These guys are known as the air sac catfish because they have an air sac that serves as a lung that extends off their gill chamber. They have short dorsal fins and have no spines on them. And what makes them unique is they have a venom gland in their pectoral fins, so they're considered kind of dangerous. And they are oviparous, so they lay eggs. There's 6 species, although it's kind of like up in the air because some taxonomic organizers don't label one of them as its own species, while another one is a synonym, believed to be a synonym for a certain species. So there's Heteropneustis fossilis, Heteropneustis fuchsius, Heteropneustis camertensis, Heteropneustis longipectoralis, Heteropneustis nani, and Heteropneustis microps.
Nice. Then that'll take us to our next family, which is Pangasidae, and these are the shark catfish. Found in fresh and brackish waters across southern Asia, so pretty much Pakistan to Borneo. There are about 30-some members of this family that are plant-eating, including one that is the Mekong giant catfish, Pangasianodon gigas, which is one of the largest known freshwater fish. And there are also a handful of species that are used in a lot of aquaculture industries in the Mekong Delta in Vietnam. This is a monophyletic group. It's also suggested that this group may be a subtaxon of the family Shilbidae, but it's not So they're not sure if this is still going to continue being its own family or not. But they do have a dorsal fin that's located very far forward, as you can see in the image, pretty close to the head, kind of very high and triangular. They also tend to have very long anal fin as well, which you can see on the bottom of the picture, up to 46 rays. They usually have about 2 barbels. However, that Mekong catfish, the adults typically only have maxillary barbels, which are around the sides of the mouth. And they tend to have fairly compressed bodies. You can see they're kind of compressed laterally, and then small kind of adipose fins, which are the you can see like their pectoral fins, and the other fins besides the ones I spoke about are fairly small to their body size. But there are 5 genera. I think one of these genera is extinct. So there's 4 extant genera, I should say: Helicophagus, Xenanodon, Pangasus, and Pseudolace.
So that'll bring us over into our next group, which is going to be Shilbidae. These guys are native to Africa and Asia. This would be that group that Alex was talking about with the shark catfish that might absorb the shark catfish eventually. These guys tend to swim in more open water, unlike most catfish you think of as like a bottom-dwelling species. They have dorsal fins with a short base, as you can see in the image. Shilbidae that Alex has pulled up. They have a spine, but a certain genus within lacks that dorsal fin altogether, which is kind of odd for fish. That's one of the more prominent features of a fish is the dorsal fin. They also have an adipose fin, as you can kind of see, that little smidgen of a fin towards the end on that dorsal side. They have a very long anal fin and 4 pairs of barbels, although several species lack that long anal fin altogether. Within this family, there are 10 genera. Eutropictus, Urvinea, Neotropius, Perilia, Periotropius, Eutropictus, Shilby, Salonia, and Solanodon.
Very cool. That'll bring us to our next family, Cisauridae. Another family of catfish, very large family, about 235 species. Of course, Asian catfish, they live in fast-moving waters, and they often have adaptations that allow them to adhere to objects, such as I forget which group it was now that I had said that has that. But there are, doing great today. There are 2 subfamilies that are in this. The first subfamily, Cisauridae, has 5 genera: Begarius, Gagata, Gogangra, Nagra, and Cisor. And then the other subfamily, Glyptosterninae, contains 3 tribes that have a whole bunch of genus. First tribe has the genus Glyptothorax. The second tribe has the geni, Chimarichthys, Cratuculoglanus, Euchologlanus, Exostoma, Glardoglanus, Glyptosternin, Myersglanus, Oreoglanus, Parachiloglanus, Peruculoglanus, and Pseudexostoma. And then the last tribe has the genus Pseudochensis. As I said, found in Asia, pretty much the entire, a good portion of Asia, southern Asia, from Turkey and Syria all the way to South China and Borneo. Primarily, though, in that Oriental region. They have 4 pairs of barbels and a very large adipose fin. They can get up to about 2 meters in length, so that's a little over 6 feet. And then, as I said, pretty much all of them, except for those in the subfamily Cisauridae, have some sort of adhesive apparatus that allows them to adhere to objects, kind of either kind of some folds of skin or some paired fins that they use almost like a suction.
So that'll move us over into our next group, which is going to be Siluridae.
This is our last family for today.
So these guys are these are like your more like most generic European Asian catfish, I'd say. Some notable species within them are the Wells catfish and phantom catfish, the murder catfish and the Aristotle's catfish as well. These guys are most diverse in Southeast Asia, as most of the groups we've talked about are. Uh, and it kind of decreases as you move more towards Europe. Although there is a more temperate Eurasian clade that lives in Europe, so there's not a lot of like distinct characteristics between the genera and species within the group. Some have show gigantism, which is basically just a big version of it. It's the same species, just a big version of it. Mostly the Wells catfish, right? You'll see like a normal size one, and you'll see like a giant one that's like 8 feet long versus like a 4 foot one.
Yeah, it said I think the largest one they've ever found. A lot of the largest Wells catfish they found have grown over 3 meters or over 10 feet in length and weigh up to 300 pounds or 140 kilograms. So quite large.
Yeah. So these guys don't have spines before that dorsal fin or adipose fin, and they either have a small or absent pelvic fin, and they have that long anal fin that kind of goes from like the midpoint of their belly all the way towards the caudal fin. And as Alex said, the largest species is that Silurus glanus, the Wells catfish, which 10 feet, 300 pounds. That's pretty hefty.
That's a very large fish.
We have a couple genera here. We got Silurus, Silurichthys, Ompoc, Wallago, Belodonychthys, Hemisilurus, Cryptopterus, Phalachronotus, Micronema, Pterocryptis, Ceratoglanus, Pinnawallago, and Wallagonia. So that'll move us on. That's, as we said, that's the last group of species for today. We'll move on into our recurring topics. Alex, why don't you kick us off with Most Wanted?
Yes, sir, I can do that. So our most one for today, I was able to stay on topic a little bit, and we got us the walking catfish. Bingo. There we go. Okay. So the walking catfish, it is native to southeastern Asia. It is in the genus Clarius. It is Clarius batrachus. As I said, native to southeastern Asia, like India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, that kind of southeastern Asian peninsula. Potentially introduced into the Philippines, and it has been found to be invasive in some parts of the United States, primarily in the Floridian Peninsula, but as well as some other pockets throughout the United States. Some of the river systems, such as California, Nevada, New Mexico, Georgia, and a small spot up in actually Massachusetts and Rhode Island as well. So kind of weird that they're able to tolerate the weather up that far north. The southern areas makes sense because of the warmer climate. They are... I'm trying to get through the here we go. So yeah, it's first identified in I think the late 1970s, and it has spread significantly throughout Florida. It is able to use atmospheric oxygen when it is in low oxygen habitats. So it makes it very kind of why it's called the walking catfish. It's able to use its fins to move over land and kind of translocate between different bodies of water, so that they are able to survive pretty well. And as I said, that overland migration is kind of why they become such a problem. They're spreading fairly quickly. They do suffer some periodic die-offs from cold temperatures and bacterial infection, which is why they really haven't moved north much. But in those warmer climates of the southern United States, they can survive pretty readily. Even without, they don't display any, if any, very minimal parental care, so they're able to, the young survive on their own pretty immediately. Kind of has invaded from aquaculture farms, those fish farms, and they're getting into those fish farms as well and predating on the native fish, as many of the catfish that we talked about are omnivorous or carnivorous, that they are able to, or they should say they do eat other fish, and especially if they get fairly large. A lot of the smaller native fish, as well as things like tadpoles from amphibians, causing a lot of problems, and it actually has led some of those fish farmers to put up fences around their ponds to protect them from the walking catfish. So kind of different in that sense that they're able to just get around and spread without needing to be in connected waterways.
Yeah, it's something that is kind of unique. There's other like urban legends of other fish species that are able to like kind of like to and from like seasonal lakes and stuff.
Mm.
But I haven't heard of this one before.
Yeah, it's pretty concentrated to the Floridian Peninsula. That's where the majority of the population is found, and that is as of the map that on the website I found. It is updated as of a week or so ago, so that's pretty accurate to their distribution. That is all I have for these guys.
All right, that'll bring us into our amazing species for the day. I also stayed on topic. I didn't remember what I did actually, but I did the Mekong giant catfish, as Alex kind of talked about earlier when we talked about their family. They are one of the largest freshwater species in the world. They are actually critically endangered right now. There you go, perfect picture. So they live in the Mekong River, which is kind of like a natural border for Vietnam and Thailand, correct?
I forget if there's a kind of how the geography there is, that if there's like a river that borders the two.
Well, either way, it goes through Thailand. It goes through most of Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia, uh, and some parts of Laos, I believe. Yes, they are critically endangered. This was assessed in 2011, so it's probably going to be updated within the near future. And they are known to occur within the upper 2,000 kilometers of the Mekong River, although or it is not known to occur there. It's estimated to have about 4,000 square kilometers of extant range. It was abundant in the early 1900s, although we've kind of seen that over the past 21 years, so since when this was written, so this is now going on 30-ish years. So since the 90s, there's been over 80% decline in the species.
It is significant. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with their size. I'm sure they're used quite heavily for food.
Food, Eastern medicine, things of that nature. Yeah. And even just bycatch, I would assume. So we don't have a legitimate like number of mature individuals. It's kind of hard to keep track of that for like aquatic species. But we got that 80% decline based off of like annual catch data. So like how much the species declined in catch data over those 30 some years. Where in like the 90s we had 65 landings, and there's a little bit of a different like it's hard to distinguish this because like some years there's like a couple, like a handful, while other years there's dozens of catches. But the most common threats to these guys are going to be like your logging. Most of Southeast Asia is what do they call it? Is they cut down the entire area, like the entire
Clear
rainforest.
cutting?
No, not clear cutting. Because then they replant and they just do like rubber trees or palm.
So they're kind of clear cutting, but then replacing it with like different
Yeah, like
arboriculture.
a monoculture.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. As well as overfishing and like runoff from agriculture and dams cutting off migration paths and just general travel of the fish in general. It is used as a food nationally and locally. Is a kind of display animal as well as a like trophy fish in the area and throughout the world. And we do have like in place conservation efforts. Since 1975, it has been on the CITES Appendix 1, which is like the like serious like kind of like the Endangered Species Act, but for like a more worldwide thing where like
Okay.
serious legal harm will come to you if you are caught actively hunting or fishing for them. That's all I have really. We'll move on into our ecology encyclopedia. Today's topic is right on the nose, we'll say.
Yeah.
So one of the most common features of a catfish is their barbels, sensory organ that they use for. How would you describe it? They use it for kind of like antenna of a fish of a insect used to pick up vibrations and things in the murky waters. Because most of these guys live on the bottom where it's lots of sediment kicked up, kind of hard to see around. They don't have the best vision to begin with. However, they're not the only fish that have these barbels, but they are the most noticeable, we'll say.
Yeah, theirs tend to be very prominent. Yeah. Seems like some of the barbels will have like taste buds sometimes, so they can kind of feel or like sort of taste, quote unquote, food that's around them. As well, if you think of like whiskers on like a cat, they use it as like a touch sensor, and dark, those dark kind of murky waters, the vibrations, as Tyler said. So they can kind of use them basically to sense their surroundings. Yeah.
So there's different types of barbels. They have the maxillary barbels, which are those big, prominent ones you see that come and kind of stick off the mouth. They also have like nasal barbels, which extend from the nostril regions. And you can have mandibular barbels, which, as you can see in the image, are the ones that kind of like dangle off the chin like a beard. And if you kind of want to know the science on like where you can see the gene expression for barbels, uh, the thought is that it comes from uh, the C to C motif, uh, ligand 33 of a chemokine family of genes, due to us seeing that expressed in a lot of catfish and zebrafish that have barbels, whereas in other members of the family that it's not expressed. Anything else to add, Alex?
Really, that's about it. Like Tyler said, there's a lot of different fish do have them. Like I said, most notably the catfish, but also some of the carp, goatfish, hagfish, sturgeon, zebrafish, the black dragonfish, as well as some species of shark, like the saw shark. They do have these, but most fish do not.
Right. But with that, that's all we have for this week. There was something I kind of wanted to bring up. We did. It was kind of like in between us recording. This happened. What was it earlier in the week? Coastal Biosciences, which is a private company who is trying to de-extinct different species. They made a breakthrough, and you guys have probably seen it in the news. We have 3 direwolf puppies, although they're not technically direwolves in the term of.
They took DNA from like a fossilized tooth, I believe, and crossed it with that of a gray wolf.
Yeah, so it's more of a gray wolf expressing direwolf traits than the actual genus for species direwolf coming back, which still huge.
Yeah, it's a major step. I mean, I'm sure a lot of that has to do with in that fossilized DNA. It's probably very fragmented and broken. It probably took them a while just to get enough of it kind of spliced together.
Yeah,
in a way that made sense.
What we used multiplex CRISPR, which for the general majority of the viewers is gonna fly right over your head. But CRISPR is a technique used to replicate DNA in mass in fractions of the time it would take to like naturally do it. And multiplex gene editing with CRISPR is whenever you target multiple sites within that DNA and edit it. So taking an A and turning it into a T or a C to a G or whatever you do in different spots. Because it would take, yes, doing it one by one would probably be more not efficient, precise, yeah. But it would take so much longer because you'd have to change the gene, grow a specimen, have it live long enough to see the expression / anything. But doing it one at a time, like doing hundreds at a time, allows you to have the direwolf puppy and say, okay, we did it. Here you go. Congratulations.
Nice. And I know Colossal Biosciences, they've been working on this project, and they're working on a bunch of other projects, such as the woolly mammoth. They're trying to see if they can do this on even a larger scale as well. I'm not sure if it's them or a similar company is working on there's been a bacteria that has been found.
That's this company too.
Is it Colossus? I couldn't remember from what I saw.
Or microbe?
Yes, which actually consumes plastics and breaks them down, and not just the way normal plastics break down, like into microplastics, but actually breaks them down into their constituent hydrocarbons and water. So they're working to kind of amplify that gene expression, that enzyme that breaks down the plastics into even be able to almost just the way that insulin is produced, basically refine it into just that enzyme and use that to treat either, like, I don't know if it'd be like in like landfills or like in recycling plants, treat these plastics to break them down. I know obviously we've talked a lot about invasive species. You don't want to just be going and releasing a microbe out into the wild without in places it's not native to without knowing what it's going to do.
Right.
But if we can just target with this enzyme, say in like a pond ecosystem where it's really not going to go far, kind of just release the enzyme, have it target just the plastics, break all that down, and really help clean up a lot of this plastic waste, which would be a very good thing, because that is a major problem that maybe a good ecology encyclopedia talking about the Great Pacific trash pile.
Absolutely.
So
with that, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Once again, if you guys haven't already, make sure to follow us on Spotify at Life the Complete Story. Subscribe to our YouTube page at Life the Complete Story. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Life Complete Story and Facebook at Life the Complete Story. And make sure to send us an email at lifecompletestory@gmail.com if you have anything interesting that you learned, anything you want to share with us. We're always open to whatever you guys have to say for us. And with that, I've been Tyler. That's been Alex. We'll
keep on learning. Keep on learning, learn something new. And have a good week, everybody.
Alex.
Yes, sir.
We're a little behind the curve on recording, just by like a week.
Yeah, just a smidge.
That's because, big news, I have moved. I have my own place now, so recording quality, that much better.
Yes, sir. Yeah, your lighting's a little better, too.
My lighting's a little better. I'm not in a well, I still am in a basement, but the basement is my own basement.
It's your own little slice of heaven.
Yes, but not to distract you guys from what you guys are here for. We're back for another episode of Life the Complete Story. As always, I am your host, Tyler, joined by my co-host, Alex.
Hello, everyone.
And we will start first with our little plugs. Make sure to follow us on YouTube at Life the Complete Story, Spotify at Life Complete Story, Instagram and TikTok at Life Complete Story, and Facebook at Life the Complete Story. We try to post on there at least once a week, whether it be the podcast itself or little tiny clips or amazing species that we find. And send us an email at lifecompletestory@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you have to say. If it doesn't fit in a little text box on the YouTube comments or what have you, send us an email. Maybe it's something, an idea you have, a new segment you want us to include. Maybe you want us to bring back from the vault, now that we're actually getting vertebrate species that we can.
Yeah, it's a little easier. We have more options. They're easier, more readily available, because now that we're invertebrate species, they actually have bones that can be fossilized.
Yes.
Much more easily.
We'll start with our Nature in the News. Today's article is from National Geographic. Let me pull it up.
Yes, sir. That's why I was a little, when you introduced me, I apologize. I was looking at the first image for our Nature in the
creepy.
News.
Today we're talking about camouflage, specifically in the invertebrate world. We're talking about a newly described Hawaiian caterpillar, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes. This is the bone collector caterpillar. Alex, can you pull an image up, maybe?
I'll just pull up that first image from the article.
There we go. This is our bone collector caterpillar. It's kind of a newly discovered species in Hawaii. It's a moth larvae, and it kind of acts as a bagworm or caddisfly larvae. Is that the one?
Yeah, I'd say probably more similar to the caddisfly in the way, in what you're seeing on the screen, which we'll explain. This is more similar to the caddisfly, I would say.
Yeah. So they construct a case, in essence, using random body parts of other insects they just find lying around. Hence why they're called the bone collector caterpillar. Obviously, invertebrates don't have bones, but you're not going to call it the part collector, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Bone collector just sounds cool, dude.
Yeah. The article says that beneath this case is a generic white gushy body. It says the entomologist Daniel Rubinoff from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And interestingly enough, this is, you think of a caterpillar, what do you think of as a caterpillar? Mostly like a monarch caterpillar where they eat like milkweed or other
most caterpillars are herbivorous.
Yeah, these are carnivorous caterpillars. They are found in the genus Hyposmocoma,
which the genus itself is known for spinning silk cases, kind of like a silkworm-esque. And some decorate using pebbles, diatoms, or lichen. So more natural things, per se. More
Not the dead bodies of other insects.
Yeah, more normal things, per se.
Yes.
Using, like, using camouflage as a larvae is not exactly a new thing, as I said. Caddisflies decorate their shells with rocks and things and sediment they find on the riverbed. Camouflage. Some use apomatotism or whatever it is, where they look poisonous but they're not. They just look unappetizing. They do look like a pile of bird poop or something of the nature.
Yeah.
So, they said that in the 22 years of scouring the Hawaiian forest, they've only collected 62 samples of this moth. I don't know if that's the moth in total, or the caterpillar, or both, or what.
Yeah. Let me scroll down here to the image of the moth. There we go. Bingo.
Interestingly, when they brought back specimens for live research in their lab, they found that the caterpillars prefer like slow-moving prey, probably other caterpillars, or...
Reading the article, it said they kind of go through like rotted logs, hollows in trees, crevices where you see a lot of like spider webs, really. What we would call cobwebs. So what they'll do, it seems like, is those insects that were caught in the spider's web and are newly dead or just very weak because they've been used a lot of energy to try to get out, and they're all tangled up. They'll go after them and even eating some of the spider silk that's left over to eat.
Yeah, typically scavenging off spider webs.
Yeah, so things that are very slow, if they're moving at all, they're very opportunistic, I would say.
Right. And this is interesting because, another reason this is interesting because it's from Hawaii, and typically in these archipelagos, or just island ecosystems in general, evolution happens somewhat rapidly because it's such a tight ecosystem that the slightest introduction of a change triggers a chain reaction that is just over.
Yeah, and being a tropical, like very rainforest area like Hawaii, pretty much all the islands I think are covered in tropical rainforest, really, especially those that aren't developed. It allows for them to pretty much do their thing all year. There's not like a specific season. Now, some will do like if there's like a rainy and a dry season.
Right.
But it's not the way like us here closer to the poles where we have 4 seasons. We have like summer, fall, or autumn, winter, and spring, which kind of, especially being with the cold of winter, really affects in the loss of sunlight as the days get shorter, really affects how nature reacts. But when they get fairly consistent sunlight year round, then it's just, is it wet or dry? But in some cases that doesn't. Even the dry season in a lot of tropical rainforests is still fairly wet. It's just not as bad.
More of an average amount of precipitation.
Yes.
But that's going to do it for this week's episode. Yeah, we're done. This week's edition of Nature in the News. We're going to move on into our lesson today. We're on part 2 of catfish. Last week we covered the Eurasian catfish.
Yes.
Covering from all the way from the Wales catfish to the shark catfish, everything that lives in that Eurasian supercontinent. Today we'll be covering the African catfish. There's not as many, but there's still a handful of families that exist within the continent. And then next week we'll be covering our American catfish, which is by far the largest, most diverse grouping that we have of catfish.
Yes.
And we figured this was the easiest way to break it down. It was way too much for one episode. It seems like just the perfect amount for 3 separate episodes, and this was the best way to break it down into those episodes. So our first family for the day, I believe last week we covered what makes a catfish? Vaguely.
I honestly don't remember.
I don't think we did, now that I think about it. So let's talk about it. Catfish are in the group Siluriformes.
There you go.
Yep. Yes, they fit in that group Siluriformes. They are named for the prominent barbels, which resemble a cat whisker, and they have a lot of different behaviors depending on their family, their genus. A lot of the larger ones, like the Mekong catfish or the Wells catfish, are carnivorous and go after live prey, or some of the other ones, like maybe the blue cat or the channel cat found in North America, they're more detritivores and stick to the bottom and eat.
That or they're kind of omnivorous. They're because I know some of them, especially as they get larger, they will become more predatory. But I think they're pretty. They're not real picky.
Nah, catfish are not picky. And there's even some species of parasitic catfish, which we'll talk about more next week when we talk about the American groups. Some have armor plating, which we've talked about before, and the shield catfish. Some are considered naked, lacking scales altogether. I believe that was more of the shark catfish. I don't think they had scales, per se.
Yeah, they had more kind of just plating.
Although not all catfish have these barbels or whiskers. But it is one of the most prominent visual features you will see from the outside. A lot of the larger species are considered important to fisheries and the food of certain cultures. A lot of South American, like indigenous tribes, use them as food because they're so plentiful and can one catfish can feed a bunch of people.
Yeah, especially in those areas where they get very large.
A lot of catfish can be considered a hobby fish. When I think of a catfish that is an aquarium fish, I think of, I forget the name. It's an Irish catfish. They're abundant in the Everglades now because you get tired of your fish, you dump it. So, although there's a lot of morphological differences within these catfish, they are all considered to be a monophyletic group, which means that they all are in that same clade. They all have the same common ancestor. And as I said, when we talked about carps, they all fall in that same Ostariophysi, which is that superorder that includes the carps, the piranhas and tetras, as well as the milkfish and knifefish, which is it's a superorder because they all contain the Weberian apparatus, which we've talked about in depth a couple times now on the show. Basically, the eardrums connect to the swim bladder and provide a more advanced sense of hearing. There's about 36 extant families. We covered a solid 10-ish, 10 to 12 last week. Then we'll be covering another 7 today. And as I said, they live in the Americas, Africa, as well as the Eurasian supercontinent. Anything else you'd like to add, Alex?
For the whole, no. I think with that, we'll probably start getting into our groups for the day, specifically our different or families.
Yes.
Families within the African catfish. So our first one for today is the family Claridae, or Claridae, however you want to pronounce it. This family has 16 genera and about 117 species, all freshwater. And many of them in this group, they're known as the air-breathing catfish. Here, you got you got the same picture I had. Look at you. They are called the air-breathing catfish because many of them possess this organ called the labyrinth organ, I think is the right one. I'm just making sure I get it. Yeah. Yes. It's called the labyrinth organ, which allows them to actually breathe some air so they can. They're also sometimes called like walking catfish because they can get out of the water and walk. Yes, so that is an image. A scientist has removed the labyrinth organ from a catfish and put it on display.
the inner bits of the lungs that I forget the
Correct.
name of.
The alveoli.
Yeah, them's.
Yes. Yeah. So it looks kind of like the branching of the like mammalian lung or the higher vertebrates lungs. But these guys, they occur in India, Syria, southern Turkey, and parts of Southeast Asia, but their diversity is largest in Africa, so we're presenting them with the African group of catfish. Of course, characterized by that elongated body, the presence of 4 barbels. They have very long dorsal and anal fins, and they have this, it is called a suprabranchial organ, which is their like gill arches, so that their gills are more in loops, which allows them to much more easily take in oxygen from the water around them. While they do have that long dorsal fin, it doesn't actually have a spine in the front of it. So that's a little different than some of the other catfish we've talked about. And some of them, the pectoral and pelvic fins are absent or very reduced. You can see in the image Tyler pulled up here, their pectoral fins are very small. Those are the ones closest to the gills.
And the genera for this group are
That is a couple, is a mouthful.
Eugyglanus and Xenoclarius. Our next group of catfish is going to be the family Eridae. These are the arid catfish. I will stop streaming so you can.
I was about to say it. I don't know what changed, but it lets me steal it now.
Yeah, it's a great update to Riverside. I love it.
Yes.
So these guys are live in marine waters as well as freshwater and brackish waters. So they're kind of universally available throughout the different types of water. Mostly found in those tropical to warm temperate zones. And there's about 143 species in this family. They have a large spine on their dorsal fin, as Alex has in the picture here. They have 3 subfamilies, which are Bagrinae, Gallithinae, and Erinae, and they are found. Well, as I said, they're found in most of the world's tropical and subtropical zones, in shallow waters, in North and South America, Africa, Asia, and Australia. Since there's not a whole bunch of straight African families, I kind of threw the more oceanic families into this group as well. They have a deeply forked caudal fin, as you can see in the image. That caudal fin is their tail fin, and they have about 3 pairs of barbels. Typically, one of the species called the gaff topsail catfish is sometimes called the crucifix catfish because when you dry out its skull, it kind of resembles the Vitruvian Man or a cruciform man. The Vitruvian Man is the famous Da Vinci drawing. Yes.
Right there.
So what makes these guys special is they're mouth-brooding fish. That means that they'll hatch their eggs and then the young will live. My bad. Before the eggs hatch, they are raised in the mouth of the male parent, and then once they hatch, they are free swimming fry.
Yeah, typically this is something you'll see in a number of fish species as well as I believe some amphibians do it as well, some frog species where they'll hold the eggs. They tend to have like a kind of a pouch at the bottom of the jaw, the lower part of the mouth that holds them kind of out of the way so they're still able to eat some until they hatch, of course. And typically, since they, it's about 2 months, so that's a fairly long time.
Yeah. Some species are notable food fish or game fish, most notably the hardhead catfish, which is found from the western Atlantic coast from Massachusetts to Mexico. They have a mixed reputation, though. They are often seen as either a game fish or a bait-stealing nuisance. As I said, that gaff topsail catfish, which is the crucifix catfish, is also another game fish. Although a lot of the smaller catfish in this family are popular home aquarium fish. So there's a lot of genera here.
Yeah, so we'll try to rapid fire some of these. So in the subfamily Erinae, we have the genuses. I'm not sure what the technical term is.
Genera.
Genera, yeah. It's been a long day. We have the genera Emicidens, Amphiaris, Areopsis, Arius, Aspister, Batrachocephalus, Brustiarius, Carlarius, Catharops, Cephalocassus, Kinkeusioa, Synetotus, Cochlophilus, Cryptarius, Genidens, Hemiarius, Hexanamadichthes, Catengus, Netostoma, Nematerax, Neoarius, Netuma, Notarius, Occidentarius, Osteogeniosus, Paragenidens, Plicofolus, Potamarius, Potamosaurus, Carmodus, and Sciates. In the subfamily Bagraeanae, we just have the genus Bagrae, and the subfamily Gallaichthienae, we have the genus Gallaichthys.
Awesome.
Sir,
What is our next group for the day, Alex?
our next group is the family Ancharidae or Ancharidae. These are a family of catfish that contain just two genera for this one, so much smaller. Ancharius and Go-Go. I don't know how. There are only 6 species in this family. They are a strictly freshwater group endemic to the island of Madagascar. So they are only found in Madagascar. Presence characterized by having fringed barbels. So their barbels tend to kind of have a fringe to them, kind of like a serration. I was trying to think of a way to describe it, and I'm like,
yeah, their fringe barbels have a fringe to them. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah,
Real
it's
specific.
just whoosh. I had a moment, and they also have a reduced anterior nuchal plate, which is kind of the back of the neck, right. So that'd be like probably right in front of the dorsal fin in that area. If you can see Tyler's cursor, it's a little difficult to see, but that plate there is reduced. Traditionally, Ancharius was classified in Aridae. However, in recent years, the consensus is that they are. Oh, sorry, it was recently. Yeah, so I apologize. I was reading the notes and it just got twisted in my head. In the past, they were classified as members of Aridae, and there weren't really enough to kind of give them their own family, but it was revised in 2005 and made as the separate family Ancharidae with the genus Ancharius and also with the genus Gojo. So with the genus Gojo, they made it its own family. But that is all we have for these guys.
Which will lead us into our next group, which is going to be Ostroglanus. This is going to be the family Ostroglannidae in the genera Ostroglanus. This is a single genera in this monotypic family. They were split from the Bagridae catfish, and there's 3 species, all endemic to southern Africa, mostly the countries of South Africa and Namibia. And both species are threatened under the IUCN Red List. They have 3 pairs of barbels. They lack a nasal barbel, which would be the barbels that are around the nostrils. They have strong dorsal and pectoral spines and a small adipose fin you can kind of see in the back there, towards the rear of the fish. You have the Barnard rock catfish, the Clan William catfish, and the rock catfish in this genera.
So 3 species.
3 species. Big numbers.
Yes, sir. That'll take us into our next family, which is Amphilidae. These are called the loach catfish. Very widespread in tropical Africa, but mostly found in high elevation streams, found to be able to cling to rocks in these fast flowing streams. There are 13 genera with 68 species. We have 3 subfamilies: Amphilinae, Leptoglannidae, and Dumainae. Now, these are generally smaller catfish. They have, as you can see in the image Tyler pulled up, they have kind of a tapered, longer style body where they have a very wide head and it narrows down towards the tail. They tend to have very large pectoral and ventral along the belly fins. And that first ray is usually a very kind of broad, flexible, and filamented to help them cling to rocks. typically small eyes located on the top of the head, being that they are bottom-dwelling fish, and they really don't have much of a gas bladder. It tends to be very reduced as compared to other fish that tend to have large swim bladders, and it's typically divided into two separate lobes that are surrounded by some bony capsules. They have 3 pairs of barbels, as some of the other ones have. Those nasal barbels are absent, and as well as the dorsal and pectoral spines are absent or sometimes very weakly developed. As I said, they're very small. The biggest ones only get about 19 centimeters or 7.5 inches, but most of them are 12 centimeters or left, which is less than 5 inches. A small mouth on the underside of the head and very thick lips that allow them to kind of grab and hold on to whatever they're eating. But unfortunately, there's not a whole lot more that it's known about these fish, just because they have very little to no economic value, being so small, being kind of hard to reach in those high elevation streams. But there is a little bit that some aquarium folks may like with these, but there's not much about them, unfortunately. Tyler, if you want to cover our
Yeah. So we got a couple genera here. In the subfamily Amphilinae, we have Amphileus, Paramphilius. In the subfamily Leptoglannidae, we have Dolichamphileus, Leptoglanus, Samphilatria, Tetracamphilus, Xyroichthys. And in the subfamily Dominae, we have Andersonia, Belanoglanus, Hongoglanus, Domea, Fractura, and Trachyglanus. And that'll move us into our next group of catfish.
Sir,
which
these
is going
guys
to
are
be
pretty neat.
Melapteridae, which are the electric catfish. So there's 2 genera, Melapterus and Paradoxoglanus, with 21 species of electric catfish. Or, not all of them are able to generate electricity, but they all fall within this group. And that shock can be up to 350 volts from a specific electric organ. They are found in tropical Africa and the Nile River, and are typically carnivorous as well as nocturnal. Some feed on fish, using that electric discharge to kind of incapacitate their prey, kind of like how we use electric charges to electrofish when we're taking samples, when we're doing population surveys. Others are, generalists, bottom feeders, just kind of suck up whatever falls to the bottom. Invertebrates, fish eggs, other dead things. And the longest of these fish go up to about 3 feet, or 1.2 meters. But a lot of the species are by far a lot smaller. So most catfish have highly developed electroreceptive organs to help them see. Those can be found in the barbel, that's why they have them. But this is the only group that has electrogenic organs, which is derived from the anterior musculature of the body, and it lines the cavity. So it's more of a band around, it's like a girdle around the torso of the catfish, more or less belt.
Yeah, it's like between the skin and the muscles.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, it pretty much lines that inner part on the outside of the fish.
And interestingly enough, I guess it wraps around the entire fish. It's not like the lateral line where it's just like a straight line of electroreceptive sensors. It lines it like a sleeve along the entire catfish. Alex, if you could please pull the image up.
Way too big. There we go.
There we go. So we've actually conditioned the Melapterus to discharge on a signal via like a reward system. I forget the psychological term for that. Is that Pavlov? Is that Pavlov who like buzzed his dogs?
Yes.
When they did the right thing? Yeah.
The bell, yeah.
Yeah.
Before he fed them.
Pavlov the catfish, so they can release a signal release a charge on signal to be given a reward. And these are well known to the ancient Egyptians. They use the electric shocks to actually treat like arthritis pain back in the days of the ancient Egyptians.
Yeah, that's. I'm sure it wouldn't feel great. I mean,
Well,
it
they
says here they mostly
specifically use the smaller fish.
Yeah, even then, it's still. I mean, even a low
I'm
voltage
sure they
shock doesn't
learned their
feel
lesson
awesome.
the first. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I'm sure someone had to learn that the hard way. Probably when they were picking the fish up, it zapped them.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it knocked them down because it said that 300 to 400 volts for an adult, like a larger adult fish, that'll put you down. I mean, it's probably not going to kill you unless you have some sort of heart problem,
Right.
but you're gonna feel it.
And these first known images of the electric catfish date back to 3100 BC under the Egyptian ruler Narmer, and then once again in the 12th century it was noted by an Arabic physician, which the fish was given the name thunder, or El Rad, the Arabic term for thunder. So that's it for this group. As I said,
Yep.
the two genera are Melapterus and Paradoxoglanus. That'll move us into our next group.
Yes, sir. Our next family is the family Machacidae. So these are known as the squeakers, or more likely the upside down catfish. So they're known like that because there are some species within this family, which there are 200 species and 9 genera that actually will swim upside down, and that's just how they live. But not all of them, as you can see in the image here, not all of them swim upside down.
Where did my
But
image go? Is it still there?
nope,
Ah.
disappeared. But they are freshwater fish originating from Africa. It's back.
Is this one here? I want this one.
I don't know, you're having issues.
I have two on my screen for some reason.
I only see the one.
Okay, it's
So,
bugged then. Okay.
Yeah, a little funky. But as I said, they're all freshwater species from Africa. They have just the 3 pairs of barbels, with those nasal barbels being absent, although sometimes they do have branched barbels around the mandible, which is the lower jaw. In a few genera, the lips are modified into more of like a sucker type mouth. The adipose fin tends to be very long. They also tend to have dorsal and pectoral fin spines, which they're very strong, and actually some of them have a locking mechanism, so I'm guessing that they kind of lock outwards to kind of hold them in defense. And they can range in size up to about 72 centimeters or 28 inches, so they can get decently large, but not nowhere near some of the biggest ones. But there are a couple species that are very popular for aquarium. They are all in the genus Synodontis. They have Synodontis nigroventris, Synodontis angelicus, and Synodontis multi. But as I said, there are 9 genera. We have Acanthoclythron, Topochilus, Topodontis, Chiloglanus, Euchiliichthys, Microsynodontis, Mochochiella, Mochochus, and Synodontis, as I said before.
All right, that'll take us into our next grouping. Oceanoglanidae. These guys are the flat-nosed catfish. They are native to the freshwater habitats of tropical Africa. Previously considered a subfamily of Chlorotidae, but they're their own family. They're kind of smaller in terms of the amount of genera within them, only containing about 3, and there's not a lot on these guys, I'll say. The 3 genera are Oceanoglanus, Notoglanidium, and Paralchenoglanus. And there's some more primitive catfish per se. Maybe one of the stem groups for the catfish themselves, would you say?
Quite possible. Quite possible indeed. I'm not 100%, not unlikely by any means. They do have some very pronounced barbels, though.
They have pronounced bivalves as well as a pronounced rostrum.
Yes, big old schnoz.
That'll take us to our last group of
Yes,
today.
sir. Our last family for today is the family Clerotidae. So this, of course, is another family of catfish found in Africa. It was actually originally part of Bagridae, but it was separated from Bagridae. It has 9 genera with 65 known species. As we said, the family Echinoglannidae was formerly a subfamily of this family, but it is no longer. The most well-known species is not the one that's on screen. It's a different one that called the African big-eye catfish, Chrysictis longipinus. They tend to have elongated bodies, but not super long. They have 4 pairs of barbels. They do have the adipose fin and some very strong dorsal and pectoral fins. In the image that Tyler pulled up, you can see at the front of that dorsal fin, which is the first one on the top, right behind the head, that spine is very pronounced.
It's very thick.
It's very thick, yes. The earliest fossil members were found in the late Paleocene to the early Eocene in Nigeria and Mali. There's not a ton about these guys. Are the living ones are found to be primarily freshwater, if not exclusively freshwater, but a lot of these fossil were found in marine deposits. So there's a very good chance that they moved, I'm sure, through the estuaries towards the freshwater as they evolved. And it also is possible that these freshwater catfish, over time, they became, where they were living, it was freshwater, became covered in saltwater, that more marine environment as the oceans ebbed and flowed, which is why they seem to be part of marine deposits. But we're not exactly sure. And our genera that we'll just go through our 9 living genera. We have the genus Amarganops, Bathybagrus, Chrysictis, Clerotes, Gephyroglannus, Lophiobagris, Partoglanus, and Philonemus.
Right. So that's our lesson for today. That covered the African as well as the marine groups of catfish. As I said, next week we'll be covering the largest subsection of catfish, which will be the American catfish, mostly Amazonian catfish. That's where the largest biodiversity within this.
Makes sense. It's tropical rainforest.
Correct. And then from there, we will move into what's after catfish.
I'm going to guess it's more fish.
Yeah, probably. More than likely. Just a hunch. We'll move into our next suborder, which will be Lepidogalaxy, the salamander fish.
Oh.
Funky looking. Just a sneak preview on that. But we'll move into our regular recurring sections. I will start with our amazing species. Alex, would you like to start with the most wanted since you're going to cover our ecology?
Sure, can start with our most wanted. So our most wanted for today is part of the catfish that we talked about today. It is the North African catfish, Clarius gurripinus. Now this is, in some instances, it is considered invasive. In some others, it is considered at a very high risk of becoming invasive. So it does have a documented history of being invasive in at least one location globally. I'm not sure if it says specifically here in this article I found, but it is primarily from East Timor to Brazil, Puerto Rico, but it's typically, as I said, from Africa's inland waters as well as endemic to kind of the Middle East, Israel, Syria, parts of Turkey. Introduced for aquaculture in a lot of Asian and European countries, as well as in parts of South America and the Caribbean. And it is known to be a very hardy fish that can tolerate a lot of very extreme aquatic conditions, different water qualities, which we will talk about later. Very high disease resistance. It grows very quickly, and it is an opportunistic omnivore. So it eats pretty much everything, and then you put it in front of its face, it'll eat it. And they exhibit what is called a high fecundity, which means they can reproduce very rapidly, which is why they were popular for aquaculture and game fish, but that is also what makes them a very likely candidate for becoming an invasive species as well. Especially since they are so popular, they've been introduced in a lot of places, and they have already seen some invasion, but not a ton yet in like Northern America. But as different climate areas start to warm, as well as the American South and Southwest, like Florida, California, even some of those areas in the Northwest where it stays a little warmer because you have that temperate rainforest kind of situation, has a very high likelihood of becoming even more invasive and having a larger distribution. But that is all I have for those guys. I think is that image that you have right there is that's the climate match. So you can see those very dark areas on the image there show places where it has a very high probability of becoming invasive because it matches its native habitat well.
Yeah, the darker the area in this map, the closer the match to its typical African climate is. And some of the other graphs that I've kind of flown through are distribution maps. This one confuses me because it says that no distribution, and I don't see a single dot on here that would mark any type of distribution.
I mean, unless it's showing that little dot there, that little orange dot near east of Santo Domingo.
I guess that would be the.
Because I think, is that Puerto Rico? I can't quite tell from the map. Or it is near Haiti.
It would be Puerto Rico, yeah.
Yeah, so that would probably be why.
Yeah. But as I kind of scroll through at the very top of this paper, there's a lot. These everything on these couple pages here are all different states, DNRs, Fish and Wildlife, Fish and Game Commissions, whatever, DCNR, saying no one is preventing the import of this species because they don't want. They're being proactive on this rather than reactive for once, and understanding it is a problem fish.
Yes. But that is all I have for those guys. Kind of not invasive, kind of. Not very invasive yet, but has a very high probability of becoming invasive.
That's one way to put it. And that'll move us over into our amazing species for the day. I couldn't think of the term that I used for this. We're talking about the kokuni, which is Chrysichthys cranchi. They live in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as well as the Congo, really in the Congo River Basin. We have nothing. We know it's of least concern, but we have no indication of its population trends. We know it lives in wetland areas. It was assessed in 2009 and published in 2010. 15 years ago. It's gonna need some updating real soon. But the DOC is kind of hard to get into to do research.
Yeah,
a lot of Central Africa is a very I don't want to say politically charged area, but there's a lot of conflict going on at all times within Central Africa, whether it's terrorist groups or whatever. But not a place. There's no place for that on this podcast. We're talking about the nature part, not the people part. Just understand that it is difficult for scientists to get the proper permitting and equipment and everything into some of these more conflicted areas to do the proper research to get these population trends and everything.
Yes, sir.
As I said, the geographic range is the Central African Republic, the Congo, the DRC, and Angola. No, I don't have a population trend. I don't have a generation length. So really, this amazing species isn't more of a, hey, look, this is endangered, we need to fix it. This is a, hey, look at this cool species. Alex showed a picture at the beginning of the segment on what it looks like. It's a cool species. We just don't know much about it. Let's get some research together. Let's figure it out. Let's find the generation length. Let's get some more things mapped out before this thing does disappear. Because it's least concerned now, but that was 15 years ago. How much has changed in those past 15 years in this area?
Yes.
20 years ago, the Yangtze River and the Ganges were I don't want to say pristine, but
they're in a lot better shape than they are now. That's for sure.
Yeah. So that's. And I'm not saying that the Congo River, the Niger River are nearly as bad as those rivers, but people do have an influence here. Let's get let's get this reassessed. Granted, my voice is minute in the grand scheme of things. That's all I have, really. It was more of a rant on proper population assessments. Alex, what do we have left?
Yes, sir. So our last thing for today is our ecology encyclopedia. And for this is going to be a little bit more hard science. I don't really have any pictures to show for this. But we're talking about today is water quality, specifically the parameters that we use to assess water quality. I know we've been talking a lot about fish, and this is especially in freshwater that we're looking at. So there's a number of different things we're looking for. So we have, of course, physical parameters, chemical parameters, and some biological parameters. So the physical parameters are typically some of the more easily just seen and kind of.
I threw you.
Yeah, I looked at the picture. It's a fantastic picture, and I'll talk about that in a second. But they're more easily tested, for a lot of them. Some of them not as much. Some of them, they're very easy. You can do them right there while you're on site. So our physical parameters, we have, of course, one that's probably the most obvious before you even touch the water is turbidity, which means that is the kind of the cloudiness of the water, which means kind of how much water, how much like sediment or like algae is just kind of floating in the water. And
a lot of your faster moving currents have a lower turbidity because the water is moving faster, so the sediment doesn't have as much time to
yeah, so that's why like our faster moving water tends to be more clear,
as well as headwaters, right?
Yes, yeah, that's typically your headwaters or your faster moving waters. Next, we have water temperature, which of course is just the temperature of the water, but that does affect different organisms, the different temperatures that they can tolerate, as well as the rates of chemical reactions and how much stuff can dissolve within the water itself. Next is salinity, which of course is always a big thing. The amount of salt that's in the water. It really affects aquatic organisms because it is very difficult. It takes a lot of energy to remove that salt, and if they're not already kind of equipped for it, it'll dehydrate or overhydrate. You can actually overhydrate the different aquatic organisms, and it can just kill it very quickly because it either puts too much water in and gets rid of the salt, and it starts affecting a lot of the mussels, or it takes all the water out and they just dehydrate to death pretty much. The next two are a little bit more technical. They're not quite as big of an indicator, but they can help.
Oh, can I take a guess?
What's that?
Is it BOD?
That's chemical parameters. We're not there yet. These are our last two physical. Our last two is total dissolved solids and conductivity. Conductivity kind of relates to the salinity as well as some of the dissolved solids. So the dissolved solids just whatever's in the water, it's dissolved. So your inorganic salts, metals, organic matter. For us, like as far as water quality for drinking, it affects a lot of the taste of the water, but it can be harmful to some aquatic organisms when you're looking at your heavy metals. And then conductivity, that just has to do with the dissolved ions, so the dissolved chemicals in the water, which make it able to conduct electricity. And with that is a bit of an indicator for pollution, because one of the indicators for pollution, because especially when you get some metal runoff, it can make the water more conductive. Next is our chemical parameter. So of course pH, that is how acidic or basic the water is. And a lot of chemical processes are only within certain pHs. So you have to, if the pH is too far off one way or the other, it will not allow the organism to do its regular.
A lot of that's due to, when you think of cellular processes, there's a lot of enzymes that catalyze reactions to make them go faster. When you mess with the pH a little bit too much, those proteins and enzymes tend to denature, and whatever reaction you're trying to get doesn't fit in the puzzle as well.
Yeah. Next, these two are kind of connected to each other. We have dissolved oxygen and BOD, or biological oxygen demand. So that, of course, dissolved oxygen, how much oxygen is dissolved in the water that can be taken up through like the gills of fish, or absorbed through the skin of some of our very small organisms. And of course, low dissolved oxygen means can be a lot of pollution, especially with organic matter, and that's when you get dead zones. Makes it obviously if there's no oxygen, stuff can't live.
It doesn't have to be from a pollution standpoint. There's just
Correct.
some place where the water doesn't move fast enough. But the ripples and stuff you see in like rivers, that helps add oxygen into the environment.
Correct.
But in slow moving areas where there's more of a sandy sediment and there's no like rocks for the water to like kind of fall over, there's less oxygen in there. That's when you see more of the, especially in fish, those areas where the fish that like the arapaima or the tarpon that have the mouth breathing, they can gulp air and put it into their swim bladder. That's where those fish really tend to thrive.
Yes. Yeah. And then of course the biological oxygen demand goes with that. That kind of goes with the dissolved oxygen because that's how much microorganisms are decomposing organic matter that is within the water. So this is where you get a lot of that organic pollution because you get more microorganisms and things that are breaking down, like the dead organic matter, or in the case of like you get the algal blooms, and then the result after that. The higher demand means it uses more of the dissolved oxygen, which of course can kill the larger life all around it. Next, the nutrients, specifically nitrates and phosphates. These are what, when we talked about, I think it was last week, eutrophication. Might have been 2 weeks ago. And that's kind of what causes those algal blooms, which
it was like a month ago at this point.
Sorry, it was longer ago than that. But that can really cause a lot of problems, specifically with the algal blooms. The next three are very like chemistry based. Of course, the acidity goes with the pH. The more acidic the water, the lower the pH. As well as then second is the alkalinity, which is actually the ability of the water to neutralize acid. So if it has like some bases or buffering agents, like here in Appalachia, especially where we're at in Appalachia, we have a lot of limestone as part of like our bedrock, which is a lot of calcium carbonate, which actually helps neutralize acids and bases. It's like similar to baking soda. It's the same chemical as baking soda. So that's why in the years of the industrial age, when there was a lot of steel mills in this area, it caused acid rain, but it didn't just absolutely. It wasn't great for the river and water systems, but it didn't just completely wipe them.
Yeah, same with like AMD, acid mine drainage. Yeah, it's big around here still, but we're in a spot where it's not detrimental per se. It still hurts a lot of our freshwater habitat and a lot of our organisms that live here, as we'll talk about when we talk about the diagram I pulled up. But the limestone does help with its alkalinity.
Yeah. And then the last chemical parameter is the hardness. That's the concentration of calcium and magnesium, which is really more for like people. It affects things like the taste of the water, soap scum scale. So nothing too much as a concern for like the natural water that our aquatic organisms use. And then our last two parameters are biological. This is bacteria. Typically we call it
coliforms.
Yeah, coliform, as a lot of times when we're looking for, especially in water testing for human consumption, we're looking at fecal coliforms. So that's the presence of bacteria like E. coli that typically live in the gut of mammals and come out through the waste that has gotten into the source of the water and makes it not safe for human consumption. And then with that, viruses, these are just pathogens that live in the water, can cause illness, especially in those higher concentrations. But both of these can be looked at with some pollution standpoint because eventually that will start to affect our aquatic organisms, which going to the aquatic organisms, you can see the scale that Tyler pulled up here. When doing some water quality surveys, they'll do using like kick nets, which you pretty much just put a net down on the ground and kick kind of the sediment and rocks towards the net to get some of these organisms that Tyler's pulled up to swim or flow into the net. And based on the organisms that you find, can tell you kind of how good or poor the water quality is. So if you're finding primarily things like snails, leeches, flatworms, typically, or like black fly larvae. The water quality may not be great. Now, that doesn't mean it's not good, because they could still be present. But if you're only finding them, good chance it means the water quality is not good. Now, but if you are finding a lot of things like some of your like mayflies, caddisflies on the left side of the screen here, if you're finding a lot of them, that means your water quality is very good. Also, if you're finding a lot of things like amphibians tend to be very sensitive to pollution.
Right. Another thing that's being so also when you do kick net testing, take this with a grain of salt, because that's just for that area
Yes,
of the water test.
that's not the whole water body of water.
You could test an area 3 miles from the source of the river, we'll say. You're still in that headwater area. The water's still going to be nice, near pristine. But as you get closer towards like the delta or the mouth, or that's where all the water that has flown through that river starts to collect there, and then it's just not a good time most times. So gauge that with you will. It's not the most reliable testing for the overall stream quality, we'll say.
That is all I have for our ecology encyclopedia today.
I would like to add, I did a research paper freshman year of college with Alex. Well, not with Alex, but we were in the same class, actually. I did a research paper on the effects of fracking and how it affects, the river ecosystems. And I actually learned that in like clams and mussels, some of the heavier metals like strontium and things like that will actually be absorbed by the clam and stay within the shell. Not like you're going to do, heavy metal testing on the shell of a clam just for, fun, but in the event that you do, that is a harder way to gauge.
Yeah.
More for like heavy metal concentration, like actually identifying it. But you can also do that just by taking a water sample. Prior to my current position where I'm at, I used to work in a laboratory that did soil and water testing, and these were all tests that I performed. They're relatively simple when you have the right lab equipment. And a lot of times you can do them in the field too with tablets, although they're not as reliable. But that's going to do it for us today. As always, make sure to
follow us on socials.
Like, subscribe, ring the notification bell on YouTube at Life the Complete Story. Follow us on Spotify at Life the Complete Story. Leave us a comment on both of those platforms. Find us on Facebook at Life the Complete Story, Instagram at Life Complete Story, and TikTok at Life Complete Story, or send us an email at lifecompletestory@gmail.com. I've been Tyler. That's been Alex. As we always say,
keep on learning. Learn something new. You never know what you're going to find interesting.
We'll see you next week for week 3 of Catfish.
Yes, sir.
We're back for part 3 of the Catfish.
Trace.
Welcome back to the big-ass super episode.
Yes, sir.
They're kind of like 3 normal episodes squished into one big super episode. So we're going to have another Nature in the News for you.
Yes.
This week's Nature in the News is from Science Daily, published by the Texas A&M University on May 8th, 2025. Researchers find new defense against hard-to-treat plant diseases. Alex, what's this one about?
So they took some spinach, of all things, and sorry. I was trying not to burp into the microphone. I didn't want to be rude to the listeners and the viewers and everything. So they took some spinach proteins called defensins, and they conferred to a similar kind of protection mechanism within citrus and potatoes, which is what they studied, but then also with possibly other crops. And that's the big thing right there, is the other crops. These naturally occurring kind of antimicrobial proteins or peptides, kind of a natural defense against pathogens within the plant. If they can take those and genetically engineer other plants, or just use those peptides to kind of spray them onto the plants, kind of give it that defensive layer, if you will.
The shield.
Especially against like fungi and bacteria, because fungi especially is really hard to control, because they are plants not as much, but they're kind of a funky in between plants and animals. Makes them very difficult to control. But with those antimicrobial peptides, they are able to protect different plants from these pathogens. And in 2021, the EPA did conclude that exposure of those natural defensins, those natural proteins, is safe for the U.S. population, including infants and children. Poses no health safety risks, which is good because it's already in spinach. So if you're already eating spinach,
so let me
Yeah.
clarify here. This is we're taking spinach peptides, defensins, and we're inserting it into other plants as like a antimicrobial thing, or are we taking the spinach one on top of the citruses and potatoes and making a peptide cocktail to insert into plants / apply topically to the plants?
That is what I'm trying to double check here.
So the way I read it is right now it's just spinach, but the end goal is to make sort of a cocktail of these peptides to be more all encompassing on the.
So they use citrus and potatoes. So like a citrus trees like oranges, lemons, limes, citrons, and potatoes. And they were able, so it says in the article that they were able to express the antimicrobial peptide. So that tells me that it was genetic engineering.
So they genetically engineered the potatoes and the citrus plants to have these defenses from the spinach plants. They didn't take spinach, citrus, and potato defensive mechanisms and make one big cocktail.
Correct.
Okay. I was just asking for my clarification because I'm sure my clarification is going to help with the viewers' clarification.
Yes. Yes. So when this says something like that, like it expressed, that's in like expressing that gene that they've inserted into the plant. That's not the spinach per se. So say and when we say an expression of a gene, like your eye color is the expression of that gene.
Right. Well, thank you, Alex. That's a great article. I kind of away from ecology and what we've been doing the past couple weeks.
A lot of ecology,
a lot
climate,
of climate, a lot of stuff like that. This is
zoology.
This is more microbiology and pathology stuff. So really cool stuff. We're gonna move on into today's continuation of a lesson. Our last group of catfish. These are gonna be the American catfish, our New World catfish. So when you think of these guys, you can think of red tail catfish. I missed my hands on my point. Deru catfish, which are parasitic catfish we'll talk about in a little bit.
Blue cats,
channel cats.
Channel cats especially. Big time.
Flatheads, stuff like that.
Yeah, I will talk about those later.
Yes, but yeah, let's get into it. Our first group of the day, Alex, is going to be Diplomystidae.
Diplomystidae. I don't like that picture.
What's wrong with the picture?
It's just kind of meh. This one's a little better. Yeah, this one's a little better.
So these guys are known as the velvet catfish.
There we go.
They are some of the more primitive catfish of the New World. Specifically, they live in freshwaters around Argentina and Chile, so kind of the west coast of South America. There's 6 species and 2 genera. Those genera are Diplomystes and Oliviacthis. So these are pretty much considered to be the basal primitive sister to all other catfish, based off of morphological evidence, which is like physical characteristics. So these are, they retain more plesiomorphic characteristics, which are the ancestral traits, which are like the maxillary bones, some of the barbell features, nostril features, and a pectoral girdle are all more ancestral traits that exist within them. Am I missing anything, Alex?
With that, they are the only extant catfish family with teeth, and it says a well-developed maxilla, which is the upper part of the jaw. So that is definitely something. The fact that they actually have teeth. Most catfish, I should say, it's just kind of like a very thick.
It's a plate.
Their lips are very thick, and they have kind of like a plate or like a sandpapery sort of teeth, quote unquote. But the largest of these guys can get up to 32 centimeters, or about just over a foot long, about 13 inches. So they're pretty small, mostly benthic in fast-moving streams in some places. But like many other catfish, they are generalized carnivores.
Awesome. That'll move us into our next group, Pseudopsidae. These are known as the whale catfish, which, if Alex pulls up the picture that I'm looking at, they look like whales. Yep, that's the picture.
Yup.
Very,
yes, sir.
broad-looking mouth parts.
Very wide, if you will.
Yeah. 5 genera divided into 2 subfamilies, the subfamily Cetopsinae and the subfamily Pelagianae, has halogynous. Septopsidium is in the other subfamily Cetopsinae, Cetopsis, Dentacetopsis, and Paracetopsis. These live in have a wide distribution across South America, from northern Colombia to central Argentina, inhabit a lot of places like the Orinoco River Basin, the Amazon, and the Guyana. So those are going to be the big areas we talk about today when we come to especially the South American catfish. Lots of Amazon, lots of Orinoco.
Yes. The two major rivers of South America.
So a lot of these guys are small to medium sized, even though they have the name whale catfish. They share an anal fin with a long base, so all members have that long-based anal fin. As you can see in the picture, that goes from about the midpoint on the ventral side all the way to that caudal fin. Typically, they lack dorsal and pectoral fin spines. So the spines that give it the shape, or even like they have the rays, but they don't have like an actual hard spine to them. They have reduced swim bladders, which are enclosed in a bony capsule. And a lot of them feed on insects. A lot of times they have a voracious appetite, and some are known to attack carrion or like the dead carcasses, or even the fish that are trapped in gill nets. A lot of people who live on these river basins fish great, like that's their main source of food is from the river, the fish. So they have these gill nets, and it's not uncommon for these whale catfish to kind of attack at these gill nets and snag prey from that.
As well as the people who are getting the gill nets, which because of that, they've been falsely labeled in some of those areas as parasitic catfish, but they are not parasitic catfish.
Our next group, Alex, is going to be Nematogenidae. What we got in that one?
So Nematogenidae. If this just brought up one, it's because there's only one. So in Nematogenidae, there's one species of mountain catfish. It is Nematogenus inermis. It is endemic to Chile, found in central Chile in the freshwater root systems. They grow about 41 centimeters, so about 16 inches long, but they are naked. They don't have any scales, and they are fairly elongated. There you go. You can see a picture there. They do have 3 pairs of barbels: the chin, maxillary, and nasal barbels. They do not have an adipose fin, and they are a sister group to the trichomicterids.
Our next group we're going to talk about.
Yes, which are next group. But they are obviously not the same. And there's only one extinct species described in this family, or in family and genus as well, and that is Nematogenus quivi.
Anything else?
Nope, that is all we got for these guys. Not a whole lot about them.
It's one species. What are we going to do?
One species in central Chile, not exactly a very easy area to get to as far as study research is concerned, and I'm sure especially looking for one species of catfish high in the mountains doesn't make it any easier.
Also probably low on the priority list.
Yes.
When it comes to doing extensive research, because it's a single species of catfish in the mountains of Chile. Anyway, our next group is going to be Trichomicteridae. These are the pencil catfish, or the parasitic catfish. So I mentioned the candiru catfish earlier. These guys are really small in most cases. There's 42 genera with about 286 species, making it the second most diverse family within Lorcaroidae, which is a superfamily of catfish. So what makes these guys parasitic is a lot of times since they're so small, they can swim into the gill rakers of larger fish and inhabit them. So they feed off the blood of larger fish by climbing into the gill rake. They are typically naked, so scaleless and elongated, as you can see in a variety of the pictures that Alex has up. They typically have absent chin barbels, although they typically have nasal barbels and 2 pairs of maxillary barbels, lacking an adipose fin, and some lack a pelvic fin. Like I said, a lot of them are considered to be miniaturized, not exceeding an inch long, so 2.6 centimeters for all our metric folk. They have, so I call them parasitic catfish, but they have one of the widest ranges of trophic variants within the catfish families. Only the subfamilies Vandolinae and Stegophilinae are actually parasitic. Most of them are free-living generalized predators, like most other catfish, feeding on small invertebrates. Although there is a lot known to have hematophagy, which is blood feeding, scale feeding. Some eat mucus, and others eat, dead fish, dead corpses. And some are algivorous. They eat the algae off the rocks and things. And they also inhabit a variety of habitats, including, active swimming throughout the water column, typically in the higher levels. Some live in torrent dwellers, where they live within the faster moving waters. Litter leaf dwellers, where they'll live in leaf litter sediment, while others live in the sand. So different types of sediment, different catfish prefer different types of sediment to kind of live. That's all I have on these. Anything else do you have, Alex?
No, I did want to add, though, they are one of the most successful groups to occupy cave habitats. So they do have 12 species that are hypogean, which means that they live below the soil surface, so in caves. And that is, for a fish, something that large to be that successful in living and adapting to cave habitats tells you how well that this family of catfish adapts to the varying ecosystems.
Awesome.
As why they are not allowed to be brought into the United States because they would probably be the next invasive species that we talk about.
Just because they're so adaptive? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. All right, that'll bring us into our next grouping, Calycthiidae, as we scroll down the notes a little bit.
These guys.
Ooh. There he is.
Already beat me to it. Alrighty. So, these are the armored catfishes, if you couldn't tell from the picture, because they have 2 rows of bony plates, also known as scutes, similar when we talk about the turtles. They're not really scales per se. They are like a bony plate that's kind of fused together, so they're called a scute. Contains a lot of popular freshwater aquarium fish, which are mostly in the genus Corydoras. There are 2 subfamilies in Calycthiidae. The subfamily Calycthiniae has the genera Calycthis, Dionema, Hoplosternum, Lepthoplosternum, and Megalecus. And the subfamily Corydoridae has the genera Aspidoris, Corydorus, Gastrodermis, Hoplosoma, Osteogaster, and Scleromystax. So, kind of about these guys, they are one of the most diverse siluriform, which remind me what siluriform
Catfishes
again.
in general.
Just catfishes. In the neotropics, which is basically Central and South America, in the Americas, they have 77 species total, and 170 of them fit into that neotropic area, which is why they account for about 7% of all of the catfish. And it said that genus Corydoras is the largest genus of all the catfish. So they are very well adapted, very widespread throughout their range.
Yeah, it's interesting to note that throughout the past couple of weeks, as we covered all these catfish, I think we covered a lot more families when we covered the Asian catfish, but there weren't as many genera or species within them. And now we're talking about the South American. There's not as many South American families, but there's just so many more species, and the diversity within the families themselves is just just to compare and contrast.
Yeah, it's insane. Like I said, very well adapted. They're found in pretty much most, not quite all, of the South American river drainages. So the Paraguay, South Francisco, and along the Atlantic coast of Brazil, the Amazon.
The Orinoco.
Yeah, the Orinoco. This family also presents the highest species richness in the headwaters of the Amazon. So they're the most abundant in those headwaters, which is the upstream part of the river, like where it starts up high in the mountains. You find a lot of this family of fish, of catfish. So moving on, a little bit about them. They're actually relatively small. Some of them range in size from the tiny Corydoras, which don't really get over 2 centimeters or about 0.8 inches, up to the species Hopslosternum littoral, which has been documented to grow up to 24 centimeters or 4 inches. So overall, quite small compared to a lot of the catfish that we have talked about. They do have a small ventral mouth. They can have either 1 or 2 pairs of barbels around it. They do have those strong spines on their dorsal and pectoral fins. And they also have one on the anterior border of the adipose fin, so that front edge of the adipose fin. And in many species, these spines are venomous. To add just another layer of protection, not only are they real tough and bony, they also bite back, kind of.
Awesome. Just what we need.
Sort of. Yeah. But as I said, they're very small. They live from small, swift oxygen-rich creeks to big rivers, floodplains, swamps. They actually are able to absorb oxygen through their intestines and expel that air through their anus. So they have a very strange.
Well, how does the oxygen get to the intestine?
That's what
also, they have some unique breeding habits. Typically it's just the female lays the eggs on the sediment, on the substrate, and the male comes and disperses his sperm in the water column, and fertilization happens that way through external fertilization. Some species within the subfamily Calithecinae, however I pronounced it earlier, that one, they make bubble nests, which are a lot more complex, made of foam and plant debris, and there's a lot of postnatal care that happens there too.
Which is very rare among the fish.
Correct. In Corydoras and Hoplosternum, fertilization of eggs involves sperm drinking. The female...
I was kind of hoping you weren't going to talk about it, but I knew you were.
This is me. Where the female and the male form the T position with the female's mouth over the male's genitals, and then the female drinks the sperm, releasing the sperm and the egg simultaneously. So she kind of drinks it, and then disperses it with her eggs. So it's like an external internal fertilization.
Weird.
They're also kind of a food fish, although it's really difficult because they're typically cooked with their armor on still. So rather than go through all the effort of descaling it, they just cook it whole.
Sounds about right.
That'll bring us to our next group. Loricaridae, which are known as the Loricaridae. They don't have a fancy name. I don't know why I thought they would. They're common. They're known as plecos. They're another type of armored catfish, which I thought they were when I thought we talked about armored catfish. They're not as heavy-duty armored as the previous group. The most notable species is Plecostomus. These guys are actually really invasive in the Everglades right now. So they have subfamilies. Nope, not subfamilies. Genera. Delturnae, Hypoptoma. Yep. Hypoptopometanae, Hypostomenae, Lithogenenae. These are subfamilies. I was wrong. Loricaridae, Neoplecostomenae, Otothyronae, and the genus Anoplecostomus, which I guess would fit in the the subfamily Nicoplecostomenae.
So there are a lot of the, as we said, did you say?
There's about 90 genera with 680 species.
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot, and they originate from Costa Rica, Panama, all the way down to tropical and subtropical regions of South America. As I said, they have those bony plates covering their bodies, and they have a sucker mouth as compared to the other armored catfish. So these guys are armored sucker mouth catfish would be a more descriptive term for them.
Yes.
Besides pleco. Pleco is plecostomus. Popular aquarium fish, popular food fish. Am I missing anything? I think I got most of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's pretty much all I have.
They have a uniquely modified iris.
But yes, that is pretty neat.
So they have the omega iris. How do I explain this best? So typically, when you think of your iris, the iris is what, the black part of your eye, right?
Yeah, your pupil.
That's whatever. Yeah. So there's the pupil, and there's the iris around it. So typically you have just a black dot, and that's your pupil. These guys have more of a inverted, or more of a U-shaped pupil and more iris. So that allows them to adjust the amount of light that enters their eyes better.
And it's called the omega iris because it looks like an uppercase Greek letter omega.
Inverted.
But yeah, upside down. It's pretty neat. That's very cool.
That's all I have. Anything else?
Yeah. I was just gonna add, like, having that sucker mouth is why they, if you buy them at the for an aquarium, they tend to stick to the side because a lot of them live in kind of fast flowing water habitats, so that allows them to not float away. They eat a lot of algae, invertebrates, and detritus, pretty much anything they can pick off the bottom. But there's some species, most notably the Panac genus, yes, that are known to be able to digest wood. So that is one, very cool, because not many things in general can digest wood.
Mostly invertebrates.
Yeah, mostly invertebrates, because it is such a complex sugar protein mixture, but especially for a fish, that's really neat.
Yeah. Also, that some members are air breathing, which helps them in some of the more oxygen deficient areas, so they do not undergo hypoxia. Also, we have more cave spawning individuals,
Yes,
cave
sir.
inhabiting. They are true troglobites. Those basically have reduced pigmentation, making them more of a adaptation to the cave.
That may be something worth an ecology encyclopedia to talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week.
That's the special adaptations that subterranean organisms have, especially those that live in caves, not just those that live in the dirt.
But that's
That's
all
I have for those guys.
more Caridae. Next up, Scoloplaxidae, which sounds like more armored catfish, if you ask me. It is a single genus.
It is a single genus.
The spiny dwarf catfish.
They are the spiny dwarf catfish with only 6 recognized species. One of them as recent as 2012.
Let's
so
go.
They are, yeah.
You learn something new every year.
Yes, sir. Not a whole lot about them. It just says Scoloplax. The species are, I'm not going to say Scoloplax every time, I apologize, but you're going to get tired of hearing me talk. The species are Scoloplax Baileyi, Beschini, Dicra, Distolothrix, Dolicholophia, it's a mouthful, and Ampusa, which is the pantanal dwarf catfish.
And these guys are found in South America, specifically Peru, Bolivia, Brazil, and Paraguay, so kind of central to central east South America.
Yes.
Specifically, in Rio Arapuana, Rio Madeira, tributaries to the Amazon and the Paraguay. They have
Find a picture.
Shield-shaped rostral plate, and 3 rows of odontode-bearing plates. So those are the plates we're talking about earlier when we were talking about, what was the first group we covered? The Diplomycidae, how they have actual teeth. This is the opposite, where they have these plates that have the odontodes, which are teeth-like structures, but they're more like sandpapery. They have 2 bilateral series and 1 midventral series. Bilateral ones run across the sides, correct?
Both sides.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the midventral would be the underside. So it's like they have a
Right down the middle.
yeah, they have a smoother
But yeah,
top plate, and then they have a rougher bottom plate, and then 2 side plates. So like, okay, they have a rostral plate as well. I read the next note.
Yes.
But they have recurved odontoids, so they go the opposite direction.
Interesting.
As they lack the adipose fin, so that back fin is absent. These guys are weird. They're extremely flat. The greatest length reached is about 20 millimeters, it says. These guys are tiny.
Tiny.
I guess they are called the spiny dwarf catfish. I didn't think they meant that dwarf. What? That dwarf.
Yes. Very tiny.
Yeah.
They are dwarfed.
They have enlarged thin-walled stomachs that are clear. The thought is that modified stomach is to help with buoyancy and air breathing, because they are common in black water habitats, which would be low oxygen.
Yes. Very low oxygen.
Yeah. That's it for that group.
Yeah, not a whole lot about these guys.
Wipe our hands there. Move on to the next one. Astroblepidae. Astroblepidae. One of the 2.
That's a very fun name. Astroblepidae.
Another monogeneric family. These guys are found exclusively in South America. They're found in South America, Panama, not exclusively. I read it wrong.
So Panama's not in South America.
It's in Central America.
That it is.
They are found in torrential streams in the Andean area, so these are like more mountain catfish. They have 30 recognized species. I'm not going to go into all of them, because that'd be outrageous.
You would all hate us for that.
I already do, don't worry.
Hey, who knows?
They have 2 pairs of barbels, maxillary and nasal, so mouth and nose barbels. The largest species reach about a foot, while the smallest are typically less than 4 inches long. They have sucker mouths like the loricarids, which are the plecos. They lack a spine in the dorsal fin. Well, no, the spine lacks a locking mechanism, and they also have odontoids, the tiny teeth on their skin. And they are able to live in high altitudes and climb waterfall faces.
Okay. I have seen that before, I think. I've seen
the waterfall catfish.
Yeah. Yeah, like now they're not like Niagara Falls waterfalls, but they're moving. And they're able to kind of just stick to the rocks and just slowly kind of work their way up.
I haven't seen catfish do that. I imagine it's possible, but I've seen lampreys do it.
Yeah, lampreys I'm sure do that.
Yeah. Because that's how they get from like the Great Lake regions out towards the sea to spawn. Because they spawn
in salt water.
In salt. I think. They spawn in one and they're migratory. They spawn in one and migrate to the other.
Okay. I don't know.
Our next group. Conorhynchus.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I got a beak. This is another monotypic genus of catfish. I'll stop sharing for you.
Look at that beak.
Monotypic, one species. It is Conorhynchus conorostris, which is basically like cone nose.
Yeah.
Is more or less how. That is a very loose translation. Okay, I don't speak Latin. Clearly, from my pronunciations, some of those you start to recognize some words, and like anything that's like RHY or like ROS is like
rhino.
Nose, like rhino. Yes, means something to do with like the nose or the snout. So really doesn't. It's kind of on its own because a lot of scientists don't really know where else to put it.
Yeah, it's such an oddball that no one knows where to put it, so it's its own thing.
Yes, it is in the superfamily Pimellodoideae, but that's solely from like molecular evidence, like genetic testing. It is endemic to the São Francisco River in Brazil, considered as like the symbol of the river. They do get decently large. About
Almost 2 feet.
about 54, 21 inches, and 13 kilos or 29 pounds in weight. So they get decently large, but it is an endangered species and is considered threatened by Brazil's Ministry of the Environment. While it has commercial interest, that's not going to go anywhere, hopefully, anytime soon.
I bet it'd be fun to catch one on like a rod and reel.
Yeah, it'd be kind of
It'd
funky.
be odd because like typically when we do catfishing, because we go for channel cats and blue cats, which have wide mouths.
Yes.
That's got a little pretty shallow sucker mouth. I don't know how you're gonna get
It'd be
anything.
more like catching a carp.
Yeah, throw some coin in there.
Yeah. It's like catching an old boot.
Yeah, that'll bring us into our next group, Aspidenidae. These are a smaller group of South American catfish known as the banjo cats. I will stop. Stop sharing so you can share. I don't know why you can't just snag it from me.
I could have. I was just being nice and I did it for you before. There we go.
Yeah, so these are the banjo
Look at him.
catfish. He looks pretty cool. There's about 43 species here. Within the subfamilies Aspidenidae, we have the genera Amaralia, Aspidonycthus, Aspredo, Bunocephalus, Platystachys, Pterobunocephalus, and Xylophaeus. The subfamily Hoplomyzontinae has Dupoiicthus, Ernstiicthus, Hoplomyzon, Micromyzon, and then the subfamily Pseudobunocephalini has Acanthobunocephalus and Pseudobunocephalus.
Those last two were a mouthful.
So these guys are found in a lot of the major tropical rivers. Magdalena, the Orinoco, the Amazon, so on. Bunocephalus is the only genera found in rivers west of the Andes. Some of these are pretty recently described genera. Bunocephalus is 1995, Micromyzon is 96, and Pseudobunocephalus is found as recent as 2008. So the name banjo catfish refers to their body shape. They have a wide front end, which is kind of like the banjo bit, and then the neck is the tail, and the rear would be the neck of the banjo. They have a depressed head, as you can see, which means flattened. They lack the adipose fin, as well as the dorsal spine locking mechanism. They're also scaleless, but they have keratinized skin.
So not quite armored, but scaleless. They're kind of in that funky
Hardened
in between.
skin, but not skewed.
Yes.
Size ranges from less than 2 centimeters, so less than an inch, to 15 inches or 38 centimeters. Although a lot are much less than that. A lot of times they have a cryptic coloration, so very camouflaged. As you can see, that image will blend in pretty well with the bottom of any riverbed. I'm sure that's some aquarium in some commercial area or something. That's why you can see it so well. There is a little bit of sexual dimorphism. Mature females are typically larger than the males, although in Hoplomyzon sex papillostoma, that is reversed, where the males are larger than the females. And in some genera, they have longer dorsal fin spines in the male versus the female. And these guys have a variety of habitats, from shallow backwaters all the way to estuaries, like the mouths of rivers, and even like the deeper parts of the river where it really starts to open up. Some are semi-fossorial. Fossorial animals are animals that are specialized to dig. So like in the mammal world, that'd be like a prairie dog or a mole rat. When we're talking about digging in the fish terms, it's like burying part of your body into the sediment, whether it be leaf litter or other soft substrates. So think of like angel sharks or
Flounders.
Scorpion fish, things of that nature.
Stonefish.
Stonefish don't really bury themselves. They're just cryptic enough that they look like a rock and you step on it anyway. And then die. Yeah. A lot of times they're sluggish in nature because of that benthic cryptic thing. And they kind of just wait for their prey to
show up
and get scooped up by that large mouth. A lot of times they're generalized omnivores. A lot of times we talk about generalized predators. When we talk about catfish, these guys are omnivores. They'll eat mostly any type of invertebrate or organic debris that passes through. Although some are specialized into feeding on the eggs of other catfish. A unique breeding mechanism is that in the subfamily Asperidinae, the female kind of sticks the fertilized eggs onto her belly to protect them. So we talked about bubble nests, we talked about just leaving your eggs to fend for themselves in the open, but these guys attach the fertilized eggs to the belly to protect them. Anything else I'm missing in the notes?
Nope,
Nope.
that is
Moving
all
on.
for those guys. Moving right along. Next, we have the family Ochinipteridae.
That's a banger.
Ochinipteridae. There we go. Yeah. These are the driftwood catfishes. Are of the there are two genera. Sorry, there are the former family Agenioisidae. There were two genera in that family that have been placed in this family. So now there are 22 genera with about 125 species. There we go. Found in the rivers from Panama to Argentina, so pretty much Panama to the rest of South America, but a lot of times in like floodplains, I'm guessing slower moving waters. There are all but one species have three pairs of barbels with the nasal barbels absent. Most of them have very small adipose fins. The species Agenioisis inermis, also known as the fidalgo, is been seen to reach 59 centimeters or 23 inches in length, but most of them are small. A number of species not being any longer than 3 centimeters or 1.2 inches. They are unique that they do internally fertilize their eggs, which you don't see very often in fish. Usually it's that.
It's really difficult in fish
Yes.
because there's a water column, so it just does all the work
Yeah.
for you. There's no need to.
Yes. But these fish are nocturnal. A lot of the smaller species are known to hide in logs or like in rock crevices during the day and come out at night. The larger species can consume fruit and insects and are most likely omnivorous. But the smaller ones feed primarily on insects, but they can also eat even smaller fish, shrimp, fruit, and really fine algae and plant material, at least sometimes, not all the time. There are two subfamilies, Ochinipteridae, and Centromochelinae. And in these, so with the 22 genera, I'm going to try to rapid fire these. It looks like it's going to be a challenge. So we have in the subfamily Ochinipterinae, we have the genera Agoniosis, Astrophysis, Ochinipterichthes, Ochinipterus, Entomochorus, Epapterus, Leosomadorus, Nipterus, Pseudopapterus, Pseudotatia, Spinipterus, Tetranematichthes, Tocantinsia, Trachylichthes, Tracheolopterus, Trachychoristes, and Tympanopleura. And then in the subfamily Centromochelinae, we have the genera Centromochelus, Gelanoglanus, Glanidium, and Tatia. That was a mouthful.
All right, that'll bring us into our next group. We are in Doradidae. These guys are the thorny catfish, Raphael catfish, or the talking catfish. They're native to South America, mostly the Amazon basin, although they're found pretty much anywhere that's not the Pacific coast of South America. There are 31 genera with 78 species. We have them in, they're also absent from the De La Plata drainages as well. And 70% of all the species occur within the Amazon basin, while probably the other 22 that aren't are in the Orinoco. They have a neutral shield in front of the dorsal fin, which is that plate right on top of their head, as well as some bony lumps along their lateral line, which you can see in this image as well. That they are like a thorny scute-like material. They have 3 pairs of barbels, so they lack the nasal barbel. They have an adipose fin, and their dorsal fin has about 4 to 6 rays with a spine on the first ray. They are called talking catfish because they are able to produce a sound by moving their spine or by vibrating their swim bladder. Most species are about 3.5 centimeters or an inch and a half, all the way up to 47 inches or 120 centimeters. There are 31 genera, as I said. I'm not gonna rapid fire them because that's a lot.
That is a lot. If you are interested, go look them up.
Or we'll do a separate video on them. Probably just go look them up.
Yeah. 31's a lot. You'll get tired of hearing that. You'll get
That'll
bored
move us into our
quickly.
next grouping, Heptapteridae. These guys
Yes, sir.
are the 3 barbelled catfish, probably because they have 3 barbels.
That's
Most are restricted.
amazing.
Most are restricted to South America. Imparphenus lineatus, Nemeroglanus panamensis, and Pimelodella chagressi are native to Panama, and Rhamdia, the Rhamdia species occur as far north as Mexico. This name is derived from Greek, meaning 7 fin. I count 6, but not
2 pectoral fins.
Oh yeah, I guess that would be 7. There's about 211 species described, although the diversity is poorly known. They are typically scaleless, exhibiting 3 barbels, hence the name. A large adipose fin, and their caudal fin is deeply forked. There is no unique characteristic externally to differentiate it from Pimelodidae, which I don't think we've talked about yet, have we? No.
I believe so.
There is a couple troglodytic species in the genera Pimelodella, Rhamdiopsis, and Taunaia. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 24 genera.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Moving on to the next one. There's not much on these guys since they're not really well researched.
Yeah, I was about to say there's really a whole lot of nothing on them.
Yeah, Theriatobius is the genera within Theriatobidae. It's a monogeneric family.
There we go. They are the cistern catfishes.
What does that mean?
Yep. Not sure. Sorry, I was just making sure my dog wasn't throwing up on the carpet. I apologize. She was making funny noises. So these cistern catfishes, they are a genus of very small catfish from tropical South America.
A cistern is a waterproof receptacle for holding liquids.
Yes, it's back in the old days, especially in places like castles, they would build big, like in the towers, rainwater would fill up basically big holding tanks of water. Pretty neat. Yeah.
So, for a long time, there was just one species.
Correct. That was Phreatobius cisternarum.
And then 2007 rolled around.
In 2007 we added 2 more. These are Phreatobius dracunculus. Yes, thank you. And Phreatobius sanguihella.
Yeah, so this has kind of been chunked in with a bunch of other families throughout different classifications.
Yes.
But now it is in its own family. That's it. That's all we got.
Yeah. I'll add a little more that they, as you kind of figured out, being cistern catfish, they all live underground. They're only known from artificial wells that were penetrating near-surface aquifers in the Amazon basin. And it has the widest distribution of any hypogean fish genus, since that the P. sanguihella is from the upper Amazon, which is about 2,000 kilometers from P. cisternarum, near the mouth of the Amazon, or P. dracunculus, which is in the Rio Branco drainage area, which is about 1,900 kilometers from that. So very widely spread, but really tiny, really only they basically just live in like underground rivers is the best way to put that.
Yeah, rivers, aquifers.
Underground lakes, yeah, like in the aquifers. So
That's
pretty
pretty
neat.
unique, actually.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of solely troglodytic families.
Yes. Families, genera, both together.
Alright, on to the
Especially.
next.
On to the
Pimelodidae.
next one.
These are the long-whiskered catfish. Kind of a family that's gone through a lot of work and changes. Right now, there's about 30 genera and 90 species. Most are recognized and known, but unnamed. Yeah, this one's kind of under a lot of construction. There's a lot of fish that are in genera that were like in this and have moved or from something else and moved to this. It's a mess. All are found in South America. Most reach from South America and Panama all the way up to Mexico. This is the one that has the Paraiba, which is one of the largest catfish in the New World. Brachyplatystoma filamentosum. These guys reach almost 10 feet in length, much larger than any other catfish we've talked about so far today.
Yeah, that is nearly 3 meters for our metric folks. That's a big fish.
Yeah.
Big catfish.
And a lot of times, the juveniles within this group vastly different from their adult forms. A lot of times, they're pelagic young, so they're more specialized to topwaters. Whereas you get and then as they get older, they kind of get bigger and develop to be more midwater to benthic organisms. I was like, who broke a glass?
I'm struggling today.
Yeah, most of them are generally bottom living, and they don't guard their young whatsoever. And a lot of times they're important food fish because of their large size.
Sense.
And in some of these places, they've been hybridized to be even bigger. I don't think I'm missing anything.
Doesn't look like it to me.
I might cover these in my own video later because they're cool and they're probably the most well-known catfish in South America. I have to get motivated first, though.
Yes.
We're almost done. We got 3 groups left.
Yep. The next family of catfish is Pseudopimelodidae.
Yep.
There's about 40 species. They are known as the bumblebee catfish or the dwarf marbled catfish.
Play a game.
They are very popular aquarium catfish. It is a monophyletic group, so it kind of split off from the other families or within the same superfamily of Pimelodidae. They are found within the freshwater of South America from the Atrato River in Colombia down to Argentina and Rio de la Plata. They have, as you can see, very wide mouths, small eyes, and pretty short barbels. You can't even really see it in that picture. But they're tend to be very brightly colored, have very bold markings, which is why they're called bumblebee catfish or dwarf marbled catfish. I don't know why they're called dwarf. Actually, let me back up for a second. They're called the dwarf marbled catfish because most species are relatively small, rarely exceeding 70 millimeters or 2.8 inches, and really not over 3.1 inches. The only one that does, it gets a lot bigger, and that is in the genus Batrachoglanus. It is Batrachoglanus acanthocheiroides, which grows up to 80 centimeters or 31 inches. So it is kind of the outlier within this family. The rest of them are very small.
Yes.
But within this family, there are 7 genera, as I said, Batrachoglanus, Cephalosilaurus, Cruciglanus, Lophiosilaurus, Microglanus, Ryocoglanus, and Pseudopimelodus. Anything else, Tyler?
That's all I got for these guys.
Fantastic.
On to the next. These ones, more up our alley. These are
Yes.
Ictaluridae, so these are going to be the North American catfish, if you will. They're important food fish for a lot of the, I won't say a lot of the country. A lot of Appalachia enjoys eating catfish.
Yes, sir, we did.
As well as some folk down in the south, in the southeast. Some of the big guys we got here are bullheads, mad toms, channel cats, and the blue catfish. Those are the heavy hitters when you think of North American catfish. So they do have 3 genera of blind subterranean catfish: Troglodytes, Satan, Pretella. None of those are anywhere closely related, even though they all are troglodytic.
Interesting.
Yes. Instead, they're all kind of related to a
Different genus.
different genera within the family. So it's like there's the normal one that lives in the water, in like the above ground water, and then there's like the subterranean genus for all the weird ones. The oldest known fossil member was previously thought to be Stephus from the Eocene Green River Formation in Utah. However, that has been since its own extinct family. Now, the oldest fossil member is Ictalurus reyes from the Cypress Hills Formation of Saskatchewan. So these guys go all the way from Canada down to Guatemala. Bullheads and mad toms are found in small streams and ponds. Channel cats, bullheads, and mad toms are bottom feeders. Am I missing anything? There are 7 genera: Amieris, Ictalurus, Noturus, Pretella, Pylodictis, Satan, and Troglodytes.
Yes, sir. These guys have 4 pairs of barbels, which growing up we commonly referred to them as whiskers, like how a cat has whiskers. They do not have scales, as you can see in the picture I pulled up. They're fairly smooth. They do have spines on their dorsal and pectoral fins. They have that toothless palate. They kind of have that those dermatome plates. And their spines are venomous, and it hurts a lot. I've been fortunate to not get myself stung, but I've heard it hurts a lot. In this family, one of the largest species is the blue catfish, Ictalurus furcatus, which has been found to weigh over 50 kilograms or 110 pounds, and they can get 160 centimeters or 5.2 feet. And that is the bluehead and the flathead catfish. Bullheads are typically much smaller, only half a kilogram or 1 pound, and the mad toms are even smaller than that. But they are very popular, especially in the American South. It's kind of part of folklore, as Tyler was talking about. They're very popular sporting fish. They're fun to catch. They taste really good.
What's it called when you go fishing for catfish?
Noodling.
Yeah, noodling.
Or you go.
No rod, no reel. You just have your hands.
Yes, for those who don't know, especially in the American South, where some of these catfish get quite large, there is a practice called noodling, where you go with your bare hands. Usually they have gloves on because those dermatomes still hurt, and their gill plates are very sharp. What you do is you're basically mucking through the swamp, find a hole where a catfish is probably holed up in, stick your hand down in there, make like a fist, hope it bites it, and if it bites it, you yank the fish out of the hole with your bare hands.
It sounds like a blast.
It looks kind of fun, but I've seen some. It's impressive what some of the folks down there who do it regularly can do. I've seen some very small ladies pull up some very large catfish that are almost as big as they are.
I'm getting visions of your wife going noodling. It'd be a tough ask, but
That'd be a stretch.
that'd be a strong no,
Yes.
Tyler.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah, I doubt that. But moving on, we have one more family.
We do. I had it, and then I completely forgot about it. We're talking about Lacantunidae. What are these guys? What do we got here? The Chiapas catfish. This is a single species in a single genera in a single family. We are talking Lacantunia enigmatica, an unusual catfish from the Usumacinta River in the Mexican state of Chiapas. Recently discovered in 2005 and placed in its own family right off the rip. Just finding a new family altogether anymore is just incredibly difficult. And it's just increasingly rare. And this was found in 2005, described, yes. They eat crabs, prawns, small fish, and large plant seeds. Although it was first described in 1996, it wasn't really until 2005 we determined it to be its own family, species, everything. Yeah, we did some CT scans, a lot of high-res imagery, did a lot of anatomical research on it to do all of that. And it's not related to anything else in its range.
It is very much itself.
Yes, it's similar to Ictaluridae, but it lacks a lot of those features that would make it in that family.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I said,
it only has like 2 sets of barbells.
It
has 4. Never mind.
So some key variations: the shape of its skull, jaw muscles, and gas bladder. The gas bladder has paired diverticulae, which is like an outpouch of the bladder, so it's like split.
Yeah.
Well, others have members of other catfishes have no diverticulae or just a singular one. They have far set nostrils compared to other catfish, and the maximum length is about 42.7 centimeters or 17 inches. It is flattened at the head and compressed in the tail, with a round blunt head and a non-subterminal mouth and a large thick adipose fin. But we have done it. We have wiped our hands of catfish.
We finally
After
got through it.
a month of research.
I know.
A fire call to interrupt the recording.
Scheduling conflict last week.
Yeah, just
it gets crazy.
It's been life. And we're here. We finally finished after a month for one big super episode that I was too lazy to put 3 separate episodes out.
Just didn't do it, so now you're getting one big one.
Yeah, but we're not done yet. We have our usual suspects.
Regularly scheduled programming.
So we'll start with the amazing species today. Today's amazing species is the Caddo Mad Tom. These guys are endangered, and if you were paying attention about 10 minutes ago, you would know that mad toms are found in North America. This specific species is found in the wonderful state of Arkansas, around what would this be?
These are fancy little guys. I found a picture.
The Ouachita River, I think is how you go. Oh, the Ouachita. Look at him. Look at the little dude. The Ouachita, Caddo, and Little Missouri rivers.
Southwestern Arkansas.
Yes.
Into Louisiana. And
Most occurrences occur in the Ouachita and Caddo rivers, and it is from one single location within Little Missouri, but wasn't really found until the most recent surveys. Speaking of most recent surveys, that was 2012, so we're about 13 years past, where it was assessed as endangered.
That's not great.
It's listed as endangered because its extent of occurrence is less than 5,000 square kilometers, and its actual area of occupancy is probably less than 500 square kilometers. And there's probably not more than 5 locations it's distributed, with fragmentation within that. So not great, but not much we can really do about it.
Unfortunately, no.
It does not migrate, so it lives in this area its whole life. It doesn't go upstream, downstream to.
That is the big kicker right there. Yeah, they don't move around.
The migratory species typically have some of them have a better rate of survival because they're able to move to and from, and maybe learn that some areas aren't helpful to them.
Yes.
Although that also hinders them because sometimes we stop the migratory path with damming and things of that nature.
Yeah, and it becomes.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Yes. All kinds of problems that we are running out of time to get into.
Yes. They prefer shallow gravel-bottom pools near shorelines, especially the well-compacted gravel areas, and they kind of occur underneath the rocks. A lot of the threats we have are, human-based. Lots of mining and quarrying. I assume that includes fracking.
Don't know, because it really doesn't damage the surface level water. The way, like,
the way it affects
strip
like
mine.
aquifers and
Yeah.
but also dams and hydroelectricity and agriculture and forestry effluents, a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus and algal blooms to help harm.
Yes.
Reading. Logging and gravel mining are the main culprits here, and it's unlikely for there to be any type of natural recolonization from adjacent rivers.
That makes sense. Yes, sir. My most wanted for this week is the flathead catfish. His scientific name, Pylodictis olivarius, is also known as the yellow cat, mud cat, shovelhead, whole bunch of different names.
Here's my question. Are they not
Yes.
native to the U.S.?
They are native to the U.S. I'm getting there. Hold your horses. So they are native to the Mississippi River and the Gulf of Mexico drainages. They have been stocked outside of those, such as along the Atlantic coast and especially in the western United States. And flatheads eat pretty much everything. So the problem with that is very generalistic. If you put it in front of their face, they will eat it. So the problem with that is it will eat native fish populations, non-native fish populations,
Native
invertebrates, pretty much everything. And when there's nothing else really to control them, and this you're seeing that especially in like the Chesapeake River Basin, the Chesapeake Bay Basin, is where at least on the Atlantic coast, is where they're becoming a bit of a problem, especially as you get closer to the bay.
Yeah, there's nothing really in place to stop them. There's not a large enough predator in the area besides a bull shark.
In the bay, maybe, or like in the river, like a pike or a muskie, and even then, once these things start,
gonna take out a juvenile.
Yeah. Once they get full size, you're not touching them at that point.
They get, I won't say massive, but for like a North American catfish, they get massive.
They get pretty large. Yeah, they're not quite as big as like the blue cat or some of the channel cats, but they get quite large.
Because like a 2-foot fish isn't anything to sneeze at, especially in these waters.
No, not at all. That's a pretty good sized fish. But yeah, I mean, like anything else, don't introduce a non-native species to somewhere it's not native to. I know that sounds really redundant, but they started doing these stockings in non-native waters back in the 90s when we really didn't know or care enough to do something about it, or to know not to do that kind of thing. And that's how a lot of invasive species have gotten here. But
you think we learn our lesson after a while?
One would think, but you would think.
And now we're on to our last session of the day, our ecology encyclopedia, and we've talked about fish for the past 22 episodes. You would think that we talk about the water cycle and how it works.
Yeah, a lot sooner.
Because where do fish live? In the water. So when we talk about the water cycle, we're talking about evaporation, precipitation, condensation, right?
Yes,
not
sir.
In that order.
Not necessarily in that order. Well, it's a cycle, so it can start from anywhere.
Well, I put the cycle in the wrong order, because I said precipitation, then condensation.
Oh, eventually it condensates.
It's got to go back through the cycle to condensate.
Yeah.
So as Alex put up in this wonderful graph, we have the water cycle. Most of the time, ice typically start from evaporation. And a lot of times your water evaporates from lakes, rivers, streams, as well as the ocean. Large bodies of water.
Pretty much anywhere that there is standing water on the surface and it can heat up, it eventually will evaporate to some degree, like your swimming pool.
Yeah.
If you have a swimming pool.
But that's not the only way that water goes from the Earth's surface to the atmosphere. There's also transpiration from plants. So
that's a bit more of a technical kind of...
Basically, the plants sweat.
Yes, the easiest way to describe it is this is how plants keep pulling water from their roots up to the very tip top of the plant.
Yes.
Water is released, and of course it uses the water as it...
Yeah, this is the excess water that's not used from...
Correct.
The roots all the way up to the top of the plants. It gets released through the stoma.
Stoma.
I almost said
The
stromata. That's
stoma.
the wrong plant term.
Yeah, the stoma.
But the stoma releases water vapor, and that goes up into the atmosphere. From there, the atmosphere is a lot cooler the further away from the Earth's surface you get, so it starts to condense and turn from water vapor back into liquid water, and it forms the clouds and everything. And then once the clouds get heavy enough, you get precipitation, whether it's rain, snow, sleet, hail, whatever. The water comes back down.
Yes.
From there, it typically melts if it's snow or hail, and turns into runoff, and that runoff either gets absorbed into aquifers and groundwater sources,
Or it
goes
continues to run off into surface water again.
and that is the water cycle in the broadest sense.
Yes.
There's not much more to it. There are other cycles. There are other biochemical cycles. The carbon cycle.
Yeah, we could get into quite the discussion with the carbon cycle. It's a doozy.
There's the nitrogen and phosphorus cycle too, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
they all have cycles.
I didn't know this because the phosphorus cycle is weird because
Yeah, it's really short.
Yeah, phosphorus is a naturally occurring element, except for the stuff that occurs naturally, plants can't use, right?
It has to be made into phosphates.
It has to turn into a phosphate somehow.
Which usually requires water, I think, or oxygenation.
Yeah, they're weird. The phosphorus cycle is weird because it's so abundant in the earth, but it can't be used by the plants. And the nitrogen cycle is so abundant in the atmosphere, but the atmospheric nitrogen can't be used by the plants. It has to be turned into nitrates by bacteria and
had to do it the hard way.
Like, yeah, a biochem can't be easy. You have to do it the hard way. But that's gonna do it for today's episode.
Yes.
As always, make sure to like us on Instagram at Life Complete Story, like us on TikTok, follow us on TikTok at Life Complete Story, send us an email at lifecompletestory@gmail.com, and make sure to like, follow, subscribe, whatever, on our YouTube and Spotify page. That's where we post these episodes on a somewhat weekly basis.
As regularly as we can. We try to be weekly, but we're human.
Yeah. Things get busy.
We're busy, yeah.
Yeah.
We both have full-time jobs and volunteer stuff
this
outside of
this.
this.
Is a very much passion project that I'm amazed we've pumped out 42 episodes in a year.
Honestly, yeah.
Good on us.
Yeah, good on us, and thank you for listening.
We appreciate every single one of you for listening, watching, interacting with us on a somewhat weekly basis. I've been Tyler. I've been Alex. We appreciate you on Life Complete Story, and we will see you next time. And as always, Alex,
keep learning and learn something new. You'll never know what you find interesting.